Okay, good morning everyone. Big welcome. Thank you all very, very much for coming. The 2019 CAST CAPS, so this is a conference for the advancements of science and technology and professional studies, and both conferences are an excellent opportunity for higher education students to develop their critical thinking skills and also receive some positive constructive feedback on a major piece of work that they have completed throughout the year. I'm very excited to welcome our two judges who have joined us today. So we have Patricia Mackey, the Community Planning Manager for Ards and North Down Borough Council, and we have our Entrepreneur in Residence and the Chair of Tourism NI, Professor Terence Brannigan. So thank you very much both for joining us this morning. So the format for this morning is quite relaxed. So we're going to have 5. Yes. It is. I do have to let you know that we are streaming this live across all of the campuses. That doesn't really mean, so don't worry about that. So there's going to be 5 presentations to start off with. So the 5 CAST presentations. Once we have those completed, you're going to be then presented with certificates from our 2 external judges. That will then followed by the 5 CAPS presentations, and then there will be a final presentation and closing words from Ken and Michael. And I would also, we have lots of healthy snacks and food here, so please help yourself. We want to try and lower your cholesterol levels, so please work away, take some water and fruit. Okay. So our first presentation is from Yasmin, and Yasmin studies the foundation degree in science in applied and medical sciences. So Yasmin, if you would like to come up.
So my presentation was on the determination of vitamin D within serum samples of cows. I carried this out at AFB on my 10-week work placement between just before Christmas and after Christmas. So the background to the project is that we were doing the research into the amount of vitamin D within the blood samples because vitamin D is really low across this latitude of the Earth due to the lack of sunlight that we get. Then the cows were treated by UV lights, which was used to increase the levels of the vitamin D within the milk by penetrating the skin, hoping it would go into the bloodstream. The process is then we can try and replace fortifying milk with just naturally enhanced vitamin D within our milk, and it was hoping to make it cheaper for the NHS, as giving out vitamin D supplements to a large amount of the population can cost them quite a lot of money. So the aim of it was to be able to see the presence of vitamin D from many blood samples in a dairy cow herd over a 12-week period. So the samples of their blood were taken every 2 weeks, and it was analysed using liquid chromatography. There was 4 processes to the method. So we had protein precipitation, liquid extraction, and then we re-extracted it, and then it was analysed within the LC, or liquid chromatography. So to conclude the findings, there was 2 types of feed given to the cows. There was T1 and T2. So half of the T1 herd were treated with UV, and the other half of the T1 herd were not treated with UV. So there was an increase of 5 micrograms per litre after 12 weeks in the T1 herd, and then there was an even higher increase of 10 in the T2 feeds. That's the navy and the light blue, which is quite difficult to see. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Can we just give you some feedback?
Yes, no problem. Running away.
In terms of the research itself, so what's the aim of the outcome? What is it you're trying to get to?
Increase the amount of vitamin D within milk, just sold in supermarkets.
But what does that do? So if you increase the amount of vitamin D, what does that actually do?
It will just increase the amount of consumption that people are going to have taken in vitamin D, because the large population drink milk. So if we can increase something that the majority of the population do take with vitamin D, it will cut down costs for the NHS and stop fortifying milk.
But what does vitamin D do?
Vitamin D, it's a supplement that is given to people. I'm not too sure.
So in terms of your health, what is?
Vitamin D, so I guess I can remember. I can't remember, sorry.
Do you want me to load your I can load your presentation.
I don't think it was on the presentation what vitamin D does.
It's just required for the diet. Really.
Yeah,
it's a very important thing in your diet. Does things like
why?
If you have a serious amount of vitamin D deficiency, it would potentially lead to rickets and things like that, and bone problems. Vitamin D is really important for calcium uptake as well, which then is good for your teeth and your bones. The husband does know all this.
Yeah, but that's all I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
So difficulty sometimes in terms of science is you understand what it is you're trying to do, but it's how does it apply? What benefit does it bring at the end of it? Yeah. So what does it deliver for people? Yeah. I'm not a scientist, but the good thing is that I understood the science. So I always look for some very simple stuff. So why are you doing it? How are you doing it? What does it do? And then what's the end result? Yeah. And all those things were there. So really that's what I would want to see. So all the things I would expect to see in terms of a presentation was really good. Yeah. But it's that payoff, I always want to know, so what does it do for me? And it's the medical payoff's the big thing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really interesting, and I suppose I just wanted to hear a wee bit more about how the industry could actually use what the findings of your study actually was. What difference would that make?
Well, it starts off that I did the second group of it, so they'd started off with a lesser amount of UV that they were penetrated with, and then I did the second one, and then they have to check to make sure that there's no effect on the cows. It hasn't damaged their skin or given them any issues. So luckily it was good feedback from that one, so they can go on and try a third and just increase see if they can increase the amount of vitamin D. So that was kind of like the first start off until they try and realise how much UV they can penetrate the cows with, to then see how much of an increase in vitamin D they can get within milk.
And did they notice any side effects from any of the?
No, it was all okay. There was no skin cancer, no problems with any of the cows. So.
Okay. So is your involvement in this, is it part of a bigger project that Greenmount are doing as well?
It's just one girl doing it, so it is. It's just one person. The funding wasn't there to have a large amount of people to do it, so they kept it quite small. So I helped her then for my 5 weeks of being there. I did with her, and she found a great help, so she did. So it's not too big of a sort of research side of things, but
yeah. No, it sounds really interesting, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it, so I did. Yeah, I'll go back tomorrow.
That's good.
That's what it's about.
Yeah. Well done, Yasmin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Yasmin. So next up we have got Christopher, the design and construction of an electronic drum kit to be developed for commercial gain. And is it Dante as well? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, sure, sorry. Thought there was somebody else. Sorry about that.
Just while these gentlemen are getting set up, As Linda says, the students who are presenting here this morning, you're real experts on these subjects. So please remember that in terms of us listening to what it is that you're going to be chatting about, we don't have any idea about a lot of this. So please don't forget to fill us in on all those little bits of information, like for example the aim of the project. So that's really important to let us know. Okay.
She's alive. Sorry folks, just 2 seconds there.
Okay, we're okay for time.
By the way, I have a son at home who's a drummer. Well, one plays guitar, one plays drums. And the one who plays drums, so why don't you pick a flute up or something like that? Because she gets
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aaron Reeve. This is my project partner, Dan Carey. We're here just to present to you our electronic drum kit that we've built during HNC engineering this year. So, Dante?
We went through on the research. We wanted to look for pricing from other competitors in the market. And what we seen here was 3 different sort of types, ranging from high, which is around the 2,000 mark, and coming up the low end, which is about 400, but they can be lower than that, about 200, 250. You could probably get a cheaper one. We wanted to look at the features. So stability, we spoke to drummers, and the main thing that they wanted was a support on the kickstand, because normally they mostly come without one. So we sort of wanted to aim towards one with a stand that supported that. And for the aesthetics and the clamps, we just wanted to make something that was makeshift. You know, it's just a prototype, so just something that was handy and easy to make in order for this project to happen.
So at the start, during our induction week, we essentially built the circuit within the first 2 weeks of being here to eliminate any sort of risk that we would get 9 months, 10 months into the project and everything would fall to pieces. So essentially within the first 2 weeks, we ensured we had a minimum viable product. Can I get that to play? How do I do that? Sorry. So there's no sound, but basically instead of it making a sound in this instance, you can see the LED will light up when it finally decides to play properly. So essentially that is now sensing an impact and triggering a reaction from it. There you go.
So you can't really see, but these are the 3 concepts that I had designed for the drum kit. I just wanted to sort of focus on the stability overall of the drum kit, wanted to make it secure so it wasn't falling apart or falling over anything. Also, obviously we want to go for low cost because we didn't want to spend too much as it's just a prototype. And as previously mentioned, I wanted to try and secure with a kick drum, so made the pull.
From the drum head point of view, we were trying to find a balance between something that would resist a lot of impact, so it could be used on a daily basis, but also looked as much like a drum kit as you possibly could. So it would have a similar layout, similar design. Here we have some of the SolidWorks as we started 3D modeling everything. So we've gone from the original concepts into a 3D model and then onto prototyping directly. The impact surfaces themselves, what we were finding was we needed to transfer the shock of an actual stick all the way down through to the sensor. Initially we used a EVA, expanded rubber foam, which worked, but only about 80% of the time. So you can see we made little prototypes there. So that basically we used those as a miniature to test rather than building full scale, wasting time and money in doing that. So this was the final layout of what we had. You can see a large shell at the bottom that holds all of the electronics, such as the piezo pickup, a top clamp to hold everything down. Now this impact surface here in our instance is sheet rubber. We actually used all sorts of different things and eventually found something that worked. There is a sub-support surface on there as well, which is Perspex, which just gives it stability. Now the nice thing about this, everything is either laser cut, or rapid prototyped, so there isn't too much manual labor involved. The code itself is actually, with Arduino being open source software, it's available for free. Now, it's been heavily modified from what we originally had, but essentially anybody could theoretically pick it up and build something from it. Specifically for us, what we found was the adaptive feedback was the issue. We needed it to feel like you were playing a drum kit. So part of that was changing the sensitivity on the drums, where if you hit it hard enough, it is giving you a louder response, which is something that the software then can process later on.
And for the manufacturing, as Aaron said there, we did all the parts that were designed on SolidWorks, and to get the physical aspect of it, we either 3D printed them or laser cut them, depending on the whole sort of what types you would need. So the clamps, they're all 3D printed, and then the drum heads, they're all laser cut. So it's just sort of aspect of half and half.
So here we can see everything coming together, the clamps being onto the pipes. You'll find the main drum heads, the cymbal heads, and the kick heads. And then this is the wiring assembly before it got a bit neatened up and made a bit nicer. This is a scaled down version of what the circuit essentially is. It's quite simple, really. Effectively, it's just resistors, pickups, and a lot of coding in the Arduino that make everything work. And there is the final assembly of the circuit box, which you can actually see on the frame over there as well.
So this is one of the problems that we came up with whenever we were designing this. We had a big problem with the tolerance. That was due to a low-end rapid prototyping machine that we were using. Plus, due to the pipes that we were using, we used PVC waste pipe, which is like really cheap. So it just depended on what size that was, and it was coming off a bit cheaper on the rapid prototype machine, or a bit smaller, the rapid prototype machine. So to get around that, we just makeshift used the heat gun to sort of expand the clamps and then push the pipes in. And then the frame layout, wanted to make it so it was adjustable to anyone who was using it. So whether you're, want it higher or lower, you can literally easily adjust it there. We wanted to make it stable, so that's why we made in the 4 legs that spread out, so it adjusts the weight of it, and also the kick, and also it's just easy to move because it's really light, because the material and everything we use, the PVC waste pipe's really light, and the adjustability of it, it can move in or out. So whether you want it closer to you or if you want it further out, just depends on what way you're wanting to play the drum. So it's very adjustable in that way, so it makes it easy.
So the kick design was specifically something that we worked on after feedback from drummers, with the kicks often moving when you play it on an electric drum kit because it is such a small light unit. So we combined the kick into the actual frame and the pedal onto a subframe as well, so the whole thing is solid and just doesn't move.
And for the potential, the cost of manufacturing, we went through it. It was actually pretty cheap to get the end product here. We sort of wanted to do that though, as it's just a prototype. So with the 3D printing, it would have cost about 10 quid. The electronic components like the piezo pickups probably cost around 25. The PVC waste pipe was like 289, so we only used 2 of them in total. So around £10, and then the screws and all would add up to about a £5. So plus the work time, it's handy enough for tech projects, so it is.
So in terms of actually turning this into a business and having potential profit there, we decided that while manufacturing it and shipping it out would be plausible, it really wouldn't work in terms of the time that you're investing and the amount of work and trying to get the consistency and that kind of thing, and you're competing with large companies that build thousands of these units. So rather build this as a DIY kit-based product where we've done the research, we've taken the work out of it, you're buying the electronics you need, the pipes you need, and all of the 3D models. Now this is great whether you're a hobbyist or you're just a maker. You don't necessarily need to be a drummer. Maybe you're just looking for something to build, to expand yourself. And it with the electronics, the coding and 3D printing being of the simpler end, now the research is done, it's a great sort of stepping on point for somebody, even with something like engineering in general. And above all else, it's going to be much cheaper than a retail kit. So thank you very much for your time. Any questions? And more importantly, does somebody want to go? It is working. You're more than welcome. Yep.
Anyone? Yeah?
Yeah, of course. Can I just steal your shirt? By all means, this is why we brought it up. There you go. So if you should work away.
I don't play the drums, by the way.
That's all right. Just hit everything. It'll be fine.
I like this noise.
Well, that's good.
There you go.
Look out, Ginger Baker.
Actually, our choir's looking a drummer, so.
Just remind me again what you set out to do.
So we wanted to build a drum kit that was affordable, easy to use, and more importantly, if you turn the speakers off on there, it's quiet. You know, it's apartment friendly. You can use that while the wife and kids are asleep upstairs. It's easy enough to do.
And where did you get to in the end? So what was the outcome?
Well, we've got our first prototype there. Obviously, you can see bits of tape and that sort of where we've made issues along the way. And I think we've got to a point where we have a viable product that could easily be replicated and remade to sort of retail standard.
The interesting thing, if you just go right to the end, I think toward the, so stop there, yeah.
Yep.
In terms of business potential, are you talking about you'd sell a kit like that, or?
I'm talking about not assembled like that. So we would
Good.
sell the files, the small electronic components, the project box. Essentially, you would get a box of small parts, and what needed rapid prototyping or laser cut, you would do yourself. You would build the electronics yourself. So it's a scaled down, much more affordable version of a drum kit for somebody that wants to build one themselves. And the beauty is it's expandable. So if you only want a kick, a snare, and a hi-hat, that's all you need to make. But the coding and everything is already set that can take up to 16 drums. So if you want to build a Neil Peart style massive drum kit, you are more than welcome to.
I think that's really good. So if you then look at, so here's where we started, this is what we wanted to do. See that thing you've just said of actually now it's about a DIY kit, it's about expandable, you're actually taking it toward a different market because of what you learned along the way, and I think that's fabulous. I mean, that's, and it is recognizing where you started from, where you've ended up, and kind of summarize those things. There's what we thought we'd do, here's where we got to, but here's actually where the potential is. There's no doubt whatsoever the thinking that went into it and the engineering went into it in electronics is superb, because I understand some of the complexity of that, because my son used to have one of those, so that he was quiet in the house, but and he'll be going to uni, and of course
Not your problem
he'd
anymore.
He'd be in halls, but no, the thinking was really good. So where you set out and where you ended up, but if you're presenting that again, do it in exactly that way, I would suggest. So here's what we set out to do, here's what happened along the way, and the good thing is you did talk about some of the issues that you met. The other good thing I thought was that you got somebody to test it. So you listened to drummers, you got them to test it and got some feedback, which is really positive. But you arrived at a different place perhaps
Yeah.
than you thought you would starting out, but you recognize that and you see where the real market is for that. That's first rate.
Thank you.
That's right.
Yeah, I know nothing about drumming, but I was that was a really impressive presentation, and the two of you look so smart presenting it as well. So well done for the added effort. Early on, you mentioned something about that at the very start of the project that you had to look at what some of the risks might be and work to eliminate those. I just wasn't sure what those initial risks that you thought you might come against were.
Essentially, there are people that have built an electric drum kit based off an Arduino, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we were capable of doing it.
Okay.
Essentially,
And
so
then Arduino is the
it's the chip that everything is
yeah.
based off. Yeah. So by building that within our first 2 weeks of being here during our induction week, essentially we've established that so long as we can build the frame of the drums, we can definitely get it to work. So it's not like we were going to get 6 months into a project and realize that we don't know how to do the wiring, we don't know how to do the electronics. So it kind of took all of that factor out.
That sounds like a really, really sensible approach. And the only other thing I was going to ask, and it sort of is a follow-up from what Terence had said, you had said that in the kit that you would be providing to people, you would have some of the components in there, but things like the laser cutting clamps that you wouldn't. Would there be any value in actually including things like that? I'm just thinking to expand.
You could potentially.
You know.
I think it's you're looking at how long it takes to prototype these
Okay.
things. If you were in an operation where you had a lot of rapid prototypers, I'm sure you could set it up and just churn them out. But with the man hours that it would take to set that up on 1 or 2 prototypers, you would kind of be butting against a wall and sort of essentially eating into profit.
Yeah.
Very well done, guys. And yet again, another very, very good presentation. Can I just ask, do you feel that is there potential for the development of a support stand as an aftermarket product for existing electronic drum kits? Because the feedback that you got said that this is something that was missing.
Potentially. I think the issue you would have is a lot of manufacturers will use not proprietary, but they'll have their own size of tubing that they would use. You know, so you could theoretically have, I suppose if you redesign the clamps, have something adaptive that could fit onto most frames. I think you would have to lose a lot of specificity to make up for the fact that there are so many different types of frames out there, though.
Super. Super. Well, congratulations and very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. We'll sell them back to you.
Yeah.
So Jack studies a foundation degree in mechatronic engineering, and his project is on product improvements to marine evacuation systems. So, Jack.
Okay, so yeah, as said there, my name is Jack Gibson. I'm studying a foundation degree in mechatronic engineering. So after this year, hopefully that gets me on to the second year of the full university mechatronic degree engineering degree course. So as part of my course, I had to find a work-based learning placement, and I did that in a company called Tech, which is responsible for like life jackets or life rafts and marine evacuation systems, that kind of thing. So that would have been through Monday to Thursday from about 8:30 through to 5. So that was pretty like working lifestyle kind of thing. And then I was in the tech on Friday doing the business improvement techniques for that as well. So as you can see there, this is just a wee bit about the scale of Tech. So it's a huge employer, employs over 2,000 people worldwide. It's got 8 manufacturing sites, 15 offshore support centres, 70 service stations and over 500 third-party service stations. So that's just kind of showing you the network that they have. Yep. So it was first set up in 1920 in Dunmurry, so it is a Northern Ireland-based site. It was mainly set up because of the huge loss of life in the Titanic. So it was first their only site, and then they've expanded to this scale over the years. So now they sell to things like private aircraft, oil tankers, cruise liners, armed forces, and the police over the world. So Survitec itself, it runs under many other brands that would probably be more noticeable. So it's things like Crusaver, which produce the life raft or the life jackets for like small like family-owned boats, or if you're just going out on boats yourself, that kind of thing. RFD itself produces life rafts again for small boats or for like huge shipping companies or oil tankers or that kind of thing. It also produces these chutes for British Airways, so if you land on water or land on land and you need to get off the plane, that's how you're able to get off. Survitec Zodiac is it also makes the life rafts, and it produces rigid inflatable boats as well. And DSB is basically just the German equivalent of that, so it also does the boats and the life rafts. So in my time in Survitec, I was involved in the design and the engineering offices. I was involved on the workshop floor during packing, and I did a bit of testing of the product itself as well. So this is one of my drawings that I had to produce of a life raft rack, which was going to hold 2 life rafts onto like the deck of a ship, and it would be able to deploy the life rafts if it was needed to do manually, or if the ship sinks and no one's deployed it, it needs to be able to deploy underwater, so that obviously there's life rafts that people can get into. So I had to redesign a design that looked similar to this. This is a design that someone else had done, and I had to redesign using SolidWorks and produce a 3D model. So this is the model that I came out with. One of the main issues with this is that the previous was too big and it couldn't fit on the ship that was specified, and so I had to reduce the size for that and reduce the weight for that as well. So in the bottom right there you see it's only like a half section of the metalwork, whereas before it was like fully solid, like a fully solid section of metal. So I think the initial weight of the one that I had to redesign was 150 kilos, and that's down to 80 kilos. So that's a huge reduction in the weight there. Then also I had to put in the straps and the method that it was going to use to release if it was underwater. So that's shown in the top right. The little yellow unit that you have there is called a hydrostatic release unit. So that's basically if it sinks or if the water pressure is raised, there's a little razor blade in that which slices through a rope if the pressure is raised, and then the natural buoyancy of the life raft allows it to float to the surface. And that's just shown there what would happen on deck. So if it is released on deck, basically the ramp just falls and they slide off and into the sea. Or if it's underwater, the razor blade cuts the rope and they're allowed just to float to the surface there. So my next bit, I was in the workshop, involved in packing. So this is basically where it's kind of like packing a parachute, in that if it is needed or you need to deploy the life raft, it's folded in a certain way that whenever the gas does fill into the life raft, it expands or it opens in a certain way that it always sits upright. And that's obviously really important, so that if there is like chaos on a boat, that it is going to sit like flat so you can get into. So this is packing stuff in like food rations, water, or sea anchors to keep it like close to the area that the disaster happened. So whenever the rescue units come, you haven't like floated off somewhere else, or you're pretty close. Pyrotechnics, so stuff like flares, the different flares to show where you are, the situation that you're in. Yeah, there's lights that also attach onto it, so you can be seen from about, or there's a light inside, which is just so you're not in darkness all the time. So that was pretty much the packing on that. The testing of the life raft I was also involved in. So this is just sort of an overrun of all the testing that I was involved in, and this is pretty standard to every life raft that goes out, goes through all of this testing, really rigorously, because obviously you don't want to put out a product that isn't going to work. Essentially, you need it really fully tested. So we're talking about wind tunnel testing, pool deployments, hot and cold testing, mooring out test, and freeboard testing. So the wind tunnel testing is basically they blow up the life raft, they strap it down in a wind tunnel, and they hit it with like gale force gusts for 2 minutes, and then back to like a standard sort of wind speed, and then back up to gale force, and then back down. And that happens for 30 minutes, and then you go in afterwards and you assess the wear and tear, and then you go back and you do the redesign. So I was involved in that. The hot and cold testing, so this is where you need your life raft to work on a range of temperatures, and obviously the temperature is going to affect the rate of gas that comes out of the cylinder and into it, so that's going to affect the time that it takes for the life raft to come up or down. So in the cold temperature, it needs to work to a temperature of -40, and so basically they just put the life raft in a freezer, which they have on site, and then they deploy it and time how long it takes to get up. And then in the hot testing, that's for stuff like tropical environments where it'll just be sitting under the sun for days, so get really hot. And so we did that testing in a oven, which was in Queen's University. So we just went out there, put it in the oven, left it for 24 hours, and then deployed it afterwards, timed it, and then assessed. The mooring out trial. So if your life raft is going to be deployed, and worst case scenario you are left at sea for 2-3 weeks, you have to test to see the durability and what's going to break, and if there are any deficiencies, that you get that sorted out before it goes to market. So we did this on Larne Loch, so we just take it out, deploy it, and then moor it out for 15 days is what we left this one out for. And then you take that back in, you assess for what the problems are or where the issues are, and then the redesign can come from that. Freeboard testing is, again, in the worst case scenario, if the tubes of the life raft decrease to the minimum operating pressure, so just it's not optimal but it's going to do, that's testing like the height that it sits above the water line. So you've got to weigh it down with a certain amount of weight, or the weight that it's supposed to take, and then basically measure how far up it is, and that gives you your factors of safety and that kind of stuff. Then the pool deployments. So for every new raft that goes out, or every new type of raft, there's going to be a slightly different variation on the way it's going to be folded to get it into the container. So whenever it is deployed, it's going to come out a slightly different way. So it gets deployed 4 times before it goes into further testing, but this is mainly just to check what way it'll come out, and if the packers are doing their job right, or like if it is going to deploy the right way. So here we have a video. This is actually a life raft that I packed on the workshop floor, so hopefully we'll load up here. So yeah, just what I gained through my placement. I learned about the importance of quality insurance and how that is like so vital with survival equipment, because obviously if you're putting your trust in a company, you don't want to then put it out and then it has to be used, and then for whatever reason it doesn't deploy or it doesn't happen. The importance of team working. So I attended a lot of meetings through my 3 months there, just talking about different things that had to change, or the assessment of what was happening. The decision-making process on all the faults that we found during the testing and what was going to happen, or what the best way to fix that was. AutoCAD drawing, so the drawing that I showed you there before, the 2D sort of aspect of it, that's all AutoCAD drawing, which I had never experienced before, and they put me through the training for that. So I've come out of that with a bit of SolidWorks or AutoCAD drawing. SolidWorks as well. I had done a little bit of that in the tech, but that's really just developed upon that, and you kind of need to be doing it 6 hours a day just to really get into how powerful it really is. Technical report writing. So for all the faults that we found through the testing, a whole report had to be written up for that, and then assessed and then changed and all the rest of that. And just a genuine passion for engineering out the other side of it. So thank you for listening. Any questions?
Thank you. That was really, really interesting. I really had no idea what we were going to hear about when it said marine evacuation systems. For some reason, life rafts didn't spring to mind. I suppose I just have a couple of questions in relation to the testing that you were talking about, because obviously you went through the different tests that are undertaken. Is there cross-referencing then of some of those? Because obviously you could have wind and sun or freezing conditions at the same time, and I'm just wondering what they do to sort of measure the accumulative impacts of some of these issues.
Yeah, well then what I did there was pretty much the first aspect of it, because I was only there for 3 months. But after that, Survitec are actually the only producer of marine evacuation systems which go like storm hunting or something. So they go and find a storm and then throw it out and then throw a load of people into it.
I hope they've good insurance.
You know what to do with your students in out time now.
And then they come out and assess. Obviously they're still with them while it's happening. They don't just leave them. But yeah, so that is really showing like a real life, not just like under set conditions. Is really like the different things can happen that you're not expecting, that they can then sort of expect for and apply for that.
And do they have to make then, it's multiple versions of exactly the same life rafts? Because I'm assuming once you find one and there's a fault, then is there a different one that's then used to test different things as well?
Yeah, it's all, yeah.
Wow, thank you. No, very well done.
A couple of things. One, I think your next placement should be in the sales department of Survitec, because you've done a great job. You've done a great job for them. I think one of the most interesting things was when you were talking about the redesign, which you did, because of the too big, too heavy. So just talk me through how that came about.
Yeah, well, basically they had a company had come to them, a big shipping company had come to them, and was looking through their different products that they had, and was like, these are all too big, or they're too heavy, or this isn't going to work for our company. And so then afterwards, the person who was supervising me, I had basically just arrived, and it was like, I have this job that I have to get to, but I'm really busy. If you want to get to this, and then I'll just kind of oversee, which I thought was great. But yeah, that was just pretty much how it arose. Was they didn't have the product that was worth, or like it wasn't, they didn't have it. And so then I had to redesign that and bring it to a specification that they had given that was going to work for them. And off the back of that, I forgot to mention there, that product itself is costing, I think, £900 to like fully machine from a metalsmithing, and they've received 5 orders for that, which I think was nice.
For me, that was the most interesting part of all, because there you were faced with an issue, with a problem, and it's a real and practical issue and problem. You're having to redesign in order to overcome 2 major issues, size and weight. And of course, at the end, you have to be able to produce something that has that can find a market, which you've done.
Yeah.
So you're doing this again. Focus mostly on that part, because that's. I mean, you've done something that is market ready, that met 2 big issues, and that's pretty smart stuff in a 3-month placement. So really well done.
Yeah, really interesting placement, Jack. Sure you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it.
The only question I have is in terms, so you explained there a really comprehensive testing protocol that Survitec go through. For your experience, when you were redesigning on SolidWorks, did you use any of the features in SolidWorks to test to see that design was going to be fit for purpose?
Yeah, I didn't myself test that, but then they go through that after I give them sort of the raw finished 3D model that I saw there, or that I showed you there, and then after that they go through that and then put that through their testing and then give it out to the customers.
Super.
Yeah.
Super. Well done.
Really
Very
good.
much.
Thank you.
Cast presentation is from the HND Foundation degree in computing. We have 3 students who are going to present a project on games and virtual reality development: Andrew Scott, Curtis Lockheed and Daniel Cree.
Right, so essentially this is our project here, Raid Party. We were tasked with creating a game as part of our project. I'm Andrew.
I'm Curtis.
I'm Daniel.
So Dan's going to discuss.
For our project, we were tasked with creating a game on Unity. And we had to work on groups of, 3. The reason how we came up with our groups is the fact that we had a project last year, which was kind of like this. We already had like a game design, so we decided to come all together and work like that. In terms of constraints for our project, we only really had 2, which was the fact that we had to work on Unity and also develop it in 10 weeks. Research into game genres. So for this project, in order to decide on what we wanted our game to actually be, we did a few game genre research, as well as looking into the different platforms to decide on what would be the best one. We ultimately decided on mobile, I think, for the first, as well as some RPG, but we'll get into that in the next slide. So what is Raid Party? Raid Party is a fantasy role-playing game with turn-based combat. Essentially, it will work through GPS overworld, which means that you'll use your phone, and depending on where you are, you'll move about, and then you'll be able to find encounters, which you'll use the AR to find a creature, then start the combat. With multiplayer functionality, you'll be able to play with other players and join up to help you defeat the creatures, as well as a loot-based progression, so enemies will drop loot, and then you can progress on like that.
Right, so after we'd come up with the original kind of idea and concept, storyboards is our next real option. So we had the storyboards that we created last year from our project and professional practice, and we decided these weren't maybe polished enough, so we created new ones based on these. We want to kind of have the same implementation and determine which release was best to do given our 10-week time frame. So our original ones, if you can see here, the first screen would just be kind of the overworld. The player would be there, you could move around kind of like the Pokemon Go. You'd have your different screens there, your options menus, your level ups, and the bottom one would be kind of Spangler Marina. You'd go there, you can hold your camera up and you would search for your monster, and you could then choose to fight and defend and group up there. Given our lack of experience in the AR, we decided for the demo purposes to show that we would just have kind of a PC game with the different menus, and would still have the same kind of turn-based combat integrated, and we just created our own map because the AR was very difficult. So we've got main menus, how to play, options where you can change like the volume and stuff that's displaying from your phone or PC. The bird's eye view of the map, different portals, different areas of players there as well. And then the levels would be basically hidden behind buttons the same way we'd have it on the phone. And with just the different assets would be displaying there with the backgrounds and the enemy and your own character. And then win screen, lose screen, depending on how the outcome of the battle is. And then once you complete the game, different screen there would show.
Yeah, so following from Andrew's storyboards there, we decided to draw up an action plan. So there were 3 main areas that we wanted to focus on to implement the game. This was in relation to the turn-based combat, the overworld, where the user would travel to the portals, and the other area was with regards to the user interface. That was with the likes of the main menu, options menu, and how to play. In order to achieve these implementations, we had to set up weekly meetings every week. So that was usually at the start of the week, and we would action these at the end of the week to see if there was anything that we needed to catch up on, and to progress with the project to do it that way. Even though we were all working separately on the project, we were kind of working in our own areas, so we kind of had to bring it all together. So when we achieved that, then we needed to test it. So there was extensive testing on all areas of the game, and we done this through Unity. So there's a specific area that we'll be able to work through, and we'll see if there's any errors or anything that didn't function as intended. And that's really where we would review the code and see if there was any errors, and if we needed outside help, then we would seek that if we needed it. So this is some screenshots there briefly. You would see more in detail later on of our finished game there in Unity. So the top right there is the world of Gateway. That's where the user would travel to the portals to fight the enemies in the combat. And the bottom left there is the turn-based combat. So you would have your warden on the left and the enemies on the right as well. And that's the combat that we opted for in the game as well. So just to evaluate the whole process and ourselves as well, I'm happy with how the game turned out and my contributions to that. It was hard at the start, but I'm glad I kind of was in between both Andrew and Dan. Andrew was more program focused and he was focusing on the combat, whereas I was kind of mostly focused on the user interface and bits of the design as well. So I was kind of programming and the design as well.
I was in charge with the whole terrain as well as some of the assets, and yeah, overall I'm quite happy with the overall design of the game. However, if we have more time, I would like to do 3D assets as well as maybe implementing the GPS system into our game.
And I'm very happy. The combat works, and that's really what's got me happy. And it took a long time, but overall successful project in our eyes. So we have a demo we're going to show now and kind of explain how it goes as it. So then how to play, just our wee menu there to show. Curtis. Yep, so just instructions telling you how to play. So, and then the quit, obviously we'll quit, but we'll not do that now at the end. So we'll play the game now and we'll enter into the world. So movement around in the world. We've got the music overplaying, kind of make it seem like get the user more engrossed. So if you go to level 2, we'll have like the progression system. You can't actually access any other levels. We wanted to make it that they could progress proper. You can't access them and they'll be prompted to make sure they completed the levels in order. So if we enter level 1 now, the combat should start. And then more big battle music for that. So turn-based, they use the enemy player always starts first. Enemy can't do anything, and then when their turn is over, they can't press their buttons again. Customizable damage, attack sounds, and it's quite loud. And then this was the leveling system, very hard to implement. It was just basically stacking on bonuses that would affect their attack or their defense, the dodge chance and everything. So choose attack just because everyone loves to have more damage. So after that, move on to level 2, the same thing again. The first level is quite easy, just to kind of get the user into it. The second level, we've got a minotaur instead of a goblin, so more health, higher stats, so it's harder to defeat, so chance of you actually dying. But then the random damage kind of comes into effect. So he's getting you. So his health took you down a lot more there, so shows the kind of the difference in the difficulty. We'll choose another attack up just because, yeah. And then the final one, we wanted to have it very hard to do. Probably won't succeed in this one first time. He's not that good at it. So Dragon, kind of regarded as one of the higher attack bosses. So even by just going attack, you can't defeat him because he'll always outdamage you. But you're not supposed to beat him, Curtis. So then after that, game complete, and then you can return to the main menu. All done. So that's our presentation, and thanks for listening.
Great, come to me first. I know absolutely nothing about video games, as will be evident by my comments and questions, so I do apologise. The one sort of bit of constructive advice I suppose I would give you is in your presentation you obviously use a lot of acronyms at the start, and I don't know what any of those actually mean, so it might be useful just the first time you're talking to somebody about it, especially if it's not a gamer, if that's the right term. You might want to just sort of explain in layman's terms what those are. But I thought the game looked very interesting. What is it that you would need to do to, because this was obviously a follow-on to a previous project, so what is it that you would need to do next to kind of move this up to the next level?
Well, definitely was the augmented reality. That was kind of the original idea. We wanted to kind of have it like Pokemon Go, but the difference that being you could instead just go out by yourself, get Pokemon, you could kind of go out socially and you could gather up and then fight the enemies. So that would be kind of just taking the geolocational that's already on your phone.
Okay.
And then just going out there and having the augmented reality instead of just having the world there. You'd hold your camera up and you actually have to find, you're getting a general area where it is, and then you'd find the portal, and then you'd all join from there and fight the boss.
Okay, so is the version that you've designed at the minute, is that a single user game, or is
we did want to have kind of an AI, it was done by artificial intelligence.
Okay. Sorry.
So that would be the instead of the player actually choosing the buttons behind like what the enemy would do, the enemy would decide itself what it's going to do.
Okay.
But it was hard to get that kind of done in Unity with the behind the buttons in our time frame. Like, for too much research would have had to have done.
And do you think you'll be able to do the augmented
Oh yeah, definitely. I think
bit
we've got a whole summer ahead of us. We kind of want to continue on with it in our own kind of ways and see what we can get done with it.
That's good. That's really nice to see that sort of progression from each of the times that you've kind of worked on it.
Yeah, a couple of comments. First of all, really good in terms of the way you structured the presentation, in terms of how you talked it through, so that defining the project, identifying project and scope, researching the genre and platforms, then what it is, the concept, and then generating the design, and then how you organise yourselves, both in terms of your own work streams and then obviously coming together and checking those as team work streams. So how it was built, the action plan, team and project management, testing, revising, error elimination, evaluation. I mean, just really good structure to it, well thought through, and interesting in terms of its marketability. We all know the size of the games market. I mean, it is multi-billion market, very competitive market out there. And it's really interesting to see how they get structured, how they get built. But in terms of virtual and augmented reality, it is the future, and it's not just about gaming. This will be a massive future. You know, one of the things I'm in is tourism, and we're using virtual reality and augmented reality now. I mean, this is the coming thing. It's already being used, but this is going to explode in terms of the use of virtual and augmented reality, because people, in terms of tourism, it's now about experiential. So it's about getting out there and understanding more about what you're seeing, getting involved in it more, seeing how it was previously, and how and how it is now, and how the change came about. This is a massive world. So it's not just gaming. It's about actually business. This is a massive business opportunity going forward. But really well designed project, well structured project, and well delivered. So
thank you.
Yeah, very good, guys. So I have just two questions. The first one on research. How much research did you do, and did you talk to actual game users as about in terms of the platform and in terms of the actual?
Well, last year, we essentially said that the game was conceived at our professional practice module, which we had to come up with a new business idea, and this was what we went for. We did the research there for costs and would people use it, so we carried out a survey among our classmates and other ones and said, would this kind of interest you? And we got a lot of overwhelming feedback and positive feedback from it, so that kind of helped us with that.
Great. And then my other question, like Patricia, I'm not into games. The last game I played was Cluedo. So, but in terms of the quality of looking at that, to me, it looked really, really professional. And the first thing I'm thinking about is there looks to be a gap there for development of a student company in games development. Is that something that you could see potential in, and maybe that you would like to become part of?
I think that was the whole idea. Like over summer, we plan to take this forward. You know, we know just by looking at it, we're big gamers ourselves, and that isn't a lot compared to some of the other games that are on the market. You know, it's not even like close to the size of them. You know, so. When we're taking it forward, the whole AR aspect, and it's really the time limitation that was the huge constraint on us, because we had such big ideas, but we knew that we wouldn't be able to implement them due to inexperience and both time. So we knew that was what we were going to have to settle for. We had to pack down a lot what we're thinking about, and
definitely there was something like I think we all enjoyed. It was stressful at times, obviously with the timeline, but I think we definitely all enjoyed working on it, and it'd be something I think definitely would want to.
Yeah, because you can see your passion.
Way, yeah.
You know, and I would imagine there'd be a lot of other students with the same enthusiasm for games that would like to work and try and ideas and develop these. So, well done.
Thanks.
Well done.
Lorimer from the HNCD in Construction and Built Environment, and Andrew's presentation is on the plan for the restoration of the Royal Hotel on Bangor Seafront.
Okay. All right, well, obviously it's been said, I'm going to talk about the plan for the restoration of the Royal Hotel at the Bangor Seafront. Now, the scheme is going to be a refurbishment and extension project, which the main idea is it's going to create jobs and attract more tourists for the local community, and it's going to be a profitable investment. Now, the aim of the hotel is to be 5-star with a spa and leisure facility, and we've taken some ideas from the success of Portrush, from the attractions and tourists that's been brought in, and as well as the Galgorm Hotel Complex and Spa. So, as you can see, town centre, it's a great area because it's close to many tourist areas. You have the Bangor Marina, the Royal Ulster Yacht Club, and Ballyholme Yacht Club. You have Picky Fun Park. You've got coastal walks as well, such as Crawfordsburn, Helens Bay, and Grimsport, and historical buildings such as Bangor Castle Town Hall, North Down Museum, and Bangor Abbey. You can also go for walks in Castle Park and Moorwood Park, which is also hosting a Snow Patrol concert this weekend. And then you have the Aurora swimming pool, and you've got golf courses such as Bangor Golf Club, Clandyboy, Carnley, so all around there. And then you've got Eddie Irvine's for go-karting, stuff like that. And then you have local bars and restaurants such as the Salty Dog, the Boathouse, Donegan's, and Jamaica Inn. And then for social areas, you have Betty Black's and Ruby's. So the idea is to create new jobs around Bangor, and with attracting a number of tourists, we'll give a high quality of service and attracting more people to the local area. It's also very close to public transport. As you can see, it's really, if you can see it very well, it's in the centre of Bangor, which is a 10-minute walk from the train station itself, so you're going to be very close to Belfast and get the train up the airport, Belfast city centre, Titanic Quarter, or even the Game of Thrones expedition. This will support the economy by attracting tourists into the Bangor area. So it's a very basic floor plan which I came up with. So as you can see, the entrance is here, restaurants and bar, both sides, you can go in. This will be the area where you'll be greeted. You have staffing area, you have 2 lifts as well, and there's kitchen, and then you can go in here, sitting area, which will lead you into the swimming pool, which is 10 metre by 10 metre swimming pool. It's also, you will get a jacuzzi and a spa area as well included into this. This is just a very rough idea for what the ground floor plan is going to look like. The building itself is 6 stories, so didn't have time to really put into more detail when going up each floors, but I'm expecting to have 36 standard rooms and 6 penthouses inside the building. So, oh, what I hit there? Thank you. All right. So, 3 areas that factors that will influence the design of the project is time, cost, and quality. These 3 areas will have a major effect. If one is focused more than the others, the other 2 will be affected. So if you're looking for the project to be built very fast, the cost will be affected and the quality of the actual finished project of the build. With that in mind, clients' requirements have hotels. Now, Wi-Fi is a main aim for hotels. Wi-Fi is important as well. We aim for delivering standout guest rooms and mobile experience now that it's a robust and seen and accessible infrastructure inside the building. Now, with that in mind, we have planning constraints. Now, as the building is listed, we will need an LB1 planning application form as well as a P2 application form as well as that standard planning forms. As the building is old and obviously it's a listed building, the aesthetics of the building will obviously take into account with that. So following the original specification of the build and design of it will have to be implicated into it. With that in mind, as the building is close to the sea as well, the environmental agency will have to be as aware of that because the building might be prone to flooding as well as that, which comes under risks. Now, social constraints come up with 3 areas. You've got neighbour rights, local community objections, and green space requirements. Now, people can object through planning permission of this project, but I think with this project it comes under what the council has established as their big plan, which they have 5 outcomes. They have outcome 1, all people in Ards and North Down fulfil their lifelong potential. Outcome 2, all people in Ards and North Down enjoy a good health and well-being. Outcome 3, all people in Ards and North Down live in community where they are respected and safe and feel secure. Outcome 4, all people in Ards and North Down benefit from the economy. All people in Ards, and outcome 5, all people in Ards and North Down feel pride as they access a well-managed, sustainable environment. So we go on to local community objections now. Now, there's a couple of areas that can affect is local businesses, as there's a new hotel there. We have the Marine Court as well. That's a local business that's been there already, and that can affect them, as well as the other areas like the rabbit rooms beside it. We are going to have a bar in there as well, so that can affect their clientele coming in. Traffic congestion. Now, as Bangor has a one-way system, this is going to increase in traffic as the hotel is there, so that can cause a big problem. With that, loss of privacy as well, as there's a lot of residents around the area, they can lose their privacy, which obviously affects their well-being and living. Parking and access, there's only 1 car park there, so maybe we might have to find another idea to bring in a new car park or something like that. And then obviously big impact is the impact on drainage itself. With a new hotel being there, there's going to be a lot of drainage and there's going to be more pipe work and everything put in, which has effects on the mains itself. Now, green space requirements. With the project being BREEAM Excellent, BREEAM is a sustainable assessment method that's done for all commercialised projects in the building industry. The rating is 75. That is the lowest. It's between 75 and 85. If you go over 85, you're really, really good. But there we go. With that, we're with the green space requirements, we can establish parks, playing fields, riverside walks, and allotments around the site itself. And it basically is reflecting back to the council's big plan is improving living and meeting requirements as it goes for outcome 1, which is all people in Ards of North Down fulfil their lifelong potential. Outcome 2, all people in Ards of North Down enjoy good health and well-being. So project budget and economic constraints, I've come up with cost planning, local land prices and life cycle costs. So if we're going with cost planning, cost and quality, as time, cost and quality, which I've went on about now, as I've said, if you focus on looking at cheapest materials for the project, that's reflecting on the cost. So obviously the quality of the build will be affected, as well as the time constraint building the actual build itself. Now, if we're looking into land prices as well, it differs where you go. Basically, if you're in more of a town centre, the land prices will be more expensive compared to if you were living out in the country where they'll be less expensive. So we'll have to look into what the actual land price is going to be for the project. And we came up with life cycle costs of the project, and we need to consider a couple of areas: the design, the construction, the maintenance, the operation and demolition of the building. Certain parts of the building might need to be taken out because of the age of it as well, but that reflects under listed buildings, which would need to be looked into greater detail. With areas taken into cost of the project, the financial worth investing of these would take into 2/3 of the final cost entered of the construction project itself. So, oh wait, missing a slide. Missing a slide, but there we go. Thank you for listening.
Andrew, you said has the building got listing? Is it listed?
It is a listed building, yes. I've looked it up. I don't know what category of listed it is, but it is under listed buildings
And
itself.
You didn't speak to Heritage?
No. I was looking, I did do research online. It does pop up as a listed building. Doesn't specify what category of listed building it is. So that's sort of area needs to be looked into more.
Yeah, because that's one of the areas that would be very significant in terms of what you can and cannot do, and therefore the cost. It's that thing of whether you can actually bring it into practical use. Because if it's that thing of if there are limitations in terms of what you can do, you may not be able to produce the kind of layout that you wanted, and you may not be able to produce the number of rooms that you want, all of that, and therefore it obviously affects the viability. So quite early on in something like that, as soon as you see it listed, so what kind of listing, as you said, is it? And then first thing I would do is talk to Heritage in terms of what's possible and not. In terms of the market, so you're talking about 5-star, what's the competition like in the area in terms of...
Marine Courts, I know it's a 3-star hotel, but I think if you have a 5-star hotel, it would boost tourism in Bangor and people want to come to Bangor itself, as there's 50 million going to be put into Queen's Parade, as has been said, you know what I mean? That's going to boost it, and if there's a 5-star hotel there, that's great for people to come, and that's encouraging people to come to Bangor.
And that's a good, I mean, it is important that you have that context, so that development at Queen's Parade is actually a very important context with this.
Yeah, that's actually something I was just going to mention. Obviously there's huge plans for Bangor that do actually appear to finally be moving forward, touch wood. And obviously some of the work that you would be planning to do on the Royal Hotel, there could be implications to that based on other work that's going on at Queen's Parade and Marine Gardens, and potentially there's a whole Bangor master waterfront plan happening. So do you have any ideas what you would potentially need to do to make sure that those other projects that are happening, that they're not going to be detrimental to what you're trying to do?
Well, any project starts off, obviously you need a traffic management plan. So before anyone goes on site, traffic management plan needs to be done to work out how the deliveries are going to come in, how we're going to get the materials on site. I've said I think best way to do something like that is early in the morning deliveries, but that could restrict because of local people around there, noise pollution. So if it's like 5 in the morning, that's going to cause effects. So we just need to look into that more to see.
Yeah, because I think I'm not overly familiar with planning, but I'm assuming that they would have constraints as to what you can do with, you know, at that kind of thing. The other question I actually had for you as well is you'd mentioned obviously the BREEAM excellence, and I was just wondering whether in this day and age, obviously environmental sustainability is an increasing thing, and obviously in addition to doing some of the BREEAM things like parks and play spaces, there's lots that could be done within the hotel to actually lower its carbon footprint, and I'm just wondering whether you'd thought about doing that, because that would have an impact on the whole life running cost of it.
Well, if you implement BREEAM, it's meant to be each point costs you £1,000. So if you're aiming for 75 as a score, that's £75,000 you're going to be, theoretically. So that's a lot of money. Normally, if it's a commercial build, that's going to have to be done. It has to be done, set out by the government itself. So that would affect time, cost and quality, as I've said, as well, implementing BREEAM excellence. But use sustainable methods. Instead of using, say, concrete, you can use steel. Steel comes up faster for the extension project. It's the extension at the back. Instead of using concrete, you can use steel. It comes up faster instead of actually pouring precast concrete instead. Or
okay. Thank you. Just one final comment is just I'm really impressed with the breadth of knowledge that, you know, across all of the different issues and all of the various bits of research that you've obviously done to actually look at those things. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just echo both comments. It was a very, very good presentation. And the only thing that I would say is, whenever you showed your initial drawing and you had your ground floor drawing, I was really looking forward to seeing like a visual of how, especially around the swimming pool, if you're gonna have glass. So if you're doing it again, would you use
if I had better time, I would put it into Revit and make it into 3D, virtual reality, so it would have been seen. You know, I would have obviously looked at it. It was just time restrictions to do it. Like, you know.
But very, very well done. Excellent.
Well done.
Thank you.
5 CAPS presentations, and there's going to be the same format. So after each presentation, the judges will provide you with feedback, and then at the end of the 5 presentations, we will have photographs. So first up, we have Johnny Finlay from the Foundation Degree in Sports Science, whose project is an investigation into strength and power endurance training for the senior squad hockey players.
Hey guys, so my name's John Finlay, but just said there, so project, so I'm studying the foundation degree in sport, exercise and fitness, so year 2, so final year. So to highlighting the title again, so investigating into power and speed endurance training for senior squad hockey players, and this took part at Regent Grammar School at my 2nd semester of placement year this year. So moving on, so project introduction, project ethos. So there was a talented number of players, so squad from senior hockey player from Regent. So these guys were interested. This came about because the head of department at Regent came to me asking if I could run a strength and conditioning program, and if I could do this. So I looked at that and went, that'd be a good project area. So I thought, put my head down and said, like, this would be a good project to progress. So moving on, the ethos bullet point there was constraints so placed on staff offer focused levels of supplementary training. So this pretty much means that there was not really anybody there at that moment in time, so teachers that could do strength and conditioning and be, because I'm personal trainer, I'm level 2 fitness instructor qualified as well, but there wasn't any that sort of had that qualifications that could do that with the hockey players. So that was obviously a good area to look for a project as well to develop. So project markability, lack of ability of specific strength and conditioning experience or expertise at the school level of sport. So that's highlighting again, there wasn't really anybody there to prevent that or to keep it going and to do that. So and then moving on to another point there was specialised expertise and opportunities for qualified students to gain real-time on-site experience. So that was like me coming from studying strength and conditioning last year and this year, obviously developed a lot of knowledge so I could put that together and run this project successfully. So moving on, so methodology of the project was participants, so Regent House first panel of hockey players, so it was 15 male players, so 16 to 18 year olds. And then moving on to assessment protocol. So the protocol I had to follow was I had to make sure there was consent form and a power cue made, because I was doing testing in a gym and I was doing testing outside and I was doing a 6-week program in the gym. So I had to make sure, because they were 16 to 18, following protocol, making sure they're fit, well, healthy, and there's no injuries, etc. And then obviously their parents knew exactly what I was doing and what I was running with them and what they were taking part in. And then moving on, so first sort of area I had to cover was initial testing. So I had 3 types of testing throughout to collect my measure from my data to review the whole project. So I did stand and broad jump test, which for the test power, and then 40-meter sprint test and repeat sprint ability test. They both highlighted on speed. So moving on, I'll pick up that in a wee minute, go back to that. So project design was a 6-week program which involved doing plyometric exercises and speed endurance training. So plyometric training, speed endurance training. So this ran for 6 weeks, and they trained on a Tuesday and a Thursday morning, and so that ran for the 6 weeks. And then obviously there was, first week was testing, last week was testing, so I could compare the results to see if they were successful or anything sort of happened in between. And then looking at the knowledge sort of side as education, I was able to give these guys sort of knowledge and what muscles they were working when they were doing the exercises, giving them coaching points, obviously highlighting, giving them more experience they can take away from this. They can go and train themselves and use these exercises. And then moving on, so to assess my sort of project throughout and to assess progression, I created individual program cards. So obviously that's monitoring the program achievement and progress. So the way I did this was, as you can see, there's a wee bit of example there of the program cards. It was one of the programs for, I think it was for Tuesday, and it has all their sets, reps, time recovery, etc. And then there's coaching points, muscles work. So it meant when I demonstrated the exercises, so it wasn't me, I wasn't repeating myself over and over again. These guys were able to take away the program card, making sure they were doing every exercise and knew exactly what they were doing. And then for the moderate this, what they did was they wrote achieved or not achieved. So if they achieved it, this in that wee outcome box, it was achieved. But if they didn't achieve it throughout the weeks, they wrote in what they didn't achieve. And if they didn't, say they only achieved 10 reps instead of hitting the 12 for that week, then that meant to be allowed to see the progress and how they were actually developing and not developing. So obviously I can see obviously for further development, which I'm going to come on to as well. So moving on, so post-testing analyst. So this is some of the results I just pulled from one of the tests, from the repeat sprint ability test. The way I managed this was I took the results before and then took the best results I could have had from that. This was a good example for a test because there was 3 bits you could have taken from the data. So you could take their overall 30-meter sprint, and then you could take the 30 times by 6 and highlight that, because the way this test worked was there was 6 30-meter sprints, and they had a run, so it was tested speed. So they ran 30 meters and then had 25 seconds to recover back around to 30 meters, and that's the way that test works. So there was a lot of data to take away from that, and there was also a fatigue decrement in that as well. So that was able to see who's improved, who's maintained and decreased. And overall, I did a wee pie chart, but I did this for all the tests. But the wee pie chart just to highlight what there was more improvement. So there was a green, there was a couple of decrease, and there was a couple of maintained the results, which was good. And I was like, I met my objectives and my aims, because at the end of the day I wanted to get an improvement on a good level of development. So just moving on to the last wee bit. So project development, the only one thing I would say is I would have liked to have a longer period of time, because we were only there for a 10-week block. So I mean, I could only run a 6-week program, which was, so I had a test the week before and after, so that was 8 weeks in total, and then to highlight everything, write everything up afterwards. But if I was to do it again, that's what a longer period of time, because I would test halfway through as well, so if I can do progressions and see where it's going. And then again, project development, I got some feedback from a lot of the players saying it was maybe too intense coming off to the last 2 or 3 weeks of the program. So that's the thing, I would maybe look back on that. But if I had more time, that means I could actually retest at certain times, change the progression, etc., and then tighten it up where they sort of getting feedback from them and seeing where they want to take this. So, and then just lastly, does anybody want to ask any questions?
Yeah. Well done.
Good, thank you. A number of questions, Johnny.
Yeah.
There's 2 things in terms of taking them through a program like that. There can be 2 things that get changed. One's just pure health,
Yeah.
and the other's development.
Yeah.
And of course, those two things are different. And what you were testing particular areas, but if you look at, was there any tests done or was there any results kept in terms of whether it affected results for the team, for example?
Yeah. Not really. Repeat that again. Could you repeat that again? Just your
So,
question. You're saying that
so what you've done there
Yeah.
is you've recorded the improvement.
Yeah.
Some didn't improve, some
Yeah,
went
yeah, yeah.
slightly back. But in terms of how that affected team performance, that is on the field, as it were.
Yeah. I didn't record any data on that, but I watched them play. I did watch them play, but that would have been another area to look at. That would have been, I reckon, I've had more time to actually, because obviously it was quite tight. After the
Yeah.
7, I was there for 10 weeks. It was literally collected the data. Obviously, we tested. I did it before testing, after testing, and that was an area I did. That would be a big improvement there. That could, potentially more marks in my project than exactly is. I exactly know where you're coming from there.
Be interesting. The other
Yeah.
thing that obviously has a big impact on people, particularly when they're training, is nutrition.
Yeah.
Was there any track kept of their nutritional intake?
There wasn't kept any nutrition. I gave them advice on it, but I didn't
Right.
keep I didn't do a diary or anything, like a 10-week diary or anything of their diet. But then again, that would have been another big improvement. But I would say I would like to do that over a more specific time, because that's only 6 weeks, is a week and a half. So you would probably prefer to do that over a 2 months, 3 months sort of period, and take it from there as well. But it was just because I had such a short time, and that's the main thing I would do. Is if I was going to do it again, I would change the time, because realistically it'd be easier to manage as well, and you could look into doing like do their training a pre-season. Say you bring us in a pre-season and you watch their whole match periods and you collect data and see if they're actually winning, stats improvement, or they're quicker off the mark, exactly stuff like that there. But that's what I'm saying, if I had the more time I could do that.
But in terms of comment, it's really well structured in terms of the ethos, the marketability, the methodology, the assessment protocol, program design, the post-testing. I mean, that's just really, really good structure to it, and those results. Be really interesting to go back then and look at things like those that didn't improve their performance. Why? What were they doing or not doing that they were supposed to be doing?
That's why
really interesting data.
The program cards were very good with that, because I noticed like the first 2 weeks everybody was fine and they were meeting each goal. So each week I am developed by like there was reps, the sets stayed the same, the recovery time decreased. And then I brought a wee bit of weight in towards the end, so when they were doing the plyometric exercises, there was weight added to their body and stuff. But I'd noticed the first 2 weeks it was completely fine, they were really good, and then the guys started tapering off. Like they started the third 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, I seen that they weren't meeting the requirements, but they were still getting up high enough, but they weren't meeting them right up to the top, which could have been a fault on me. Maybe I progressed it too quick enough, which it could have been if I had more time. I could have split it up, could have had a rest period in between. Instead, like 6 weeks is very intense. You would normally train for 4 weeks, have one rest, and then train for another 4 weeks. And that's what I'm saying. If I was able to retest halfway through, I could see if these guys are really struggling. See if say half the group wasn't improving, then I'm going, right, I'm going to have to table this down for their ability. And I was taking 15 people as well, so it's not like you're one individual person as well. As I'm saying, because everybody's different, everybody has the different makeups as well. Everybody has more experience in training. Some people don't. Like there were some people I was taking there that hadn't trained before, so I had to introduce them to equipment and stuff like that there. So it was trying to sort of manage for everybody and sort of cater for everybody. But that's another thing I would look at as well. Maybe just structure it down and try to do individually, maybe 3 or 4 groups at a time. But you obviously need more time for that. But that 6 week program it's giving a lot of knowledge for a 6 week program, if you know what I mean. It's very quickly banged on. You get to see exactly what you're trying to see to improve, or what you need to improve on, how to work, how to do the specific muscles areas and all that there and stuff. So
that's good.
Yeah. There was so much to take away from it. I guess I'm trying to think of the best things I sort of did from it. There was just a mind sort of blow. I'm just trying to think of all of it. But yeah, so.
That was a really, really good presentation, and what's really nice is to see the enthusiasm that you actually have for what it is that you're trying to do, and I can sort of hear some of the frustration of not having longer, because it could have been so much more. I particularly liked the bits that you were telling us about the methodology and those program cards, and I was just wondering, obviously this was for a hockey squad, so did you have to tailor those program cards based on what the actual sport is that you were trying to to work with?
Because that's the reason why I did, it was all for their legs. It was mostly trying to improve on their legs, so it was power and speed, because I looked at the components of fitness, and there was obviously there's 6 or 7 for hockey, because it's a multi-stage sport, it's all over the place. There's a lot of you can take components of fitness, but I took the power and the speed because they're supposed to be the most important off the mark, so that's why I had to tailor it around that. So that was based to the 6 week program. So when they were in the 6 week program, there was twice a week, so they trained on the Tuesday and the Thursday. So them exercises, so they were doing plyometric exercises, so explosive power, so a lot of jumping, a lot of contact making with the movements and stuff. So it was box jumps, and they were doing tuck jumps, stuff like that there, which is going to improve. So if they're off the mark, if they're running, so for example, if you're say from a kickoff, or from if you're under the ball from a short corner, you need that explosive sprint. That's what all that power is going to do. That's going to be nice and quick. And then just bringing in the speed endurance, it's running up and down the line, running up and down the pitch really quickly and back and forth. So that keeps that it's not like you're running a marathon, you know what I mean? That sport, it's very it's hit or miss. Sometimes you're almost you could be walking at one point and then you can be jogging. But that's why the whole speed endurance is good, because it's you're at a steady pace, and then you're up and then you're down, steady pace. So it's almost like fartlek training, but I did speed endurance training because it meant that they were at a nice steady pace, and then they were sprinting up, because that's what happens. It's all about there's a lot of sprinting going on in hockey, and it's a lot of chasing back and forth, almost after tackling for the ball. So yeah, no, they were tailored to that. So
No, that's really good. The only other comment I have is just a wee bit of advice in relation to one of your slides. Obviously you had the names of the kids that were taking part, and it's just sometimes you have to be careful just about having
participant 1, participant 2.
Because although they've signed to participate, we maybe shouldn't necessarily see who they were. But apart from that, I just thought that was brilliant.
Really Thanks very much.
Well done, Johnny.
Yeah, no problem.
We have got Farah and Lewis from HNC and Photography.
Would it be okay if I sat into my email to get it? It's just we have the updated part.
And all those things around it, so that public realm and public art.
Sure.
So hello, thank you for having us today. We are Farah and Lewis from the Pearson ZXL Level 4 in HNC and Photography. We're going to talk to you about what we've been doing throughout the year.
So the brief that we were given was to present work for the public realm. So traditionally you find art in galleries or on posters, and this is where you go to view art. But we were given the task to create art for the public. So we're first of all investigating the art that is already out in the public, and like the art that you see in Belfast. So this would include like murals that are on the walls, or the sculptures that are in Belfast. So the art that we're creating for a specific location needs to like interact with the location, so it can't just be placed in the middle of the street. It would have to interact with the certain location that we're producing it for.
So to start off, we thought, what is art in the public realm? So this quote, we thought, represents it very well. Public art is not a distant art form, rather the terms refer to the work of art in any media created for and in the context of the civic realm to be built our natural environment. So it's not just a beautiful framed piece of work hanging miraculously on a wall. It can be anything you walk past. So you have sculptures, you've got murals like Lewis said, it can be anything.
So historically, we're researching into historical and contemporary public art. So there's murals on the walls that date back long time ago, and then there's like recent public art from colleges, and then we're experimenting this with ourselves. So we're using the likes of Photoshop to implement our own photography into the public realm, and how other photographers have used it as well.
So this is my initial response. So
art, they just walk past it. So I feel like when people are looking at people's style, a lot of the youth like look at people's style and really respect that. So I decided to place them on t-shirts, and this is a Photoshop document of what they would look like on a t-shirt. I also feel like the t-shirt kind of represents what a election campaign poster would look like, and I feel like that's something that could be further explored.
So opportunities in the future. So we know that our work doesn't just stay in the classroom. We can push it further, get investments. We could look to pursue the Belfast City Council and the Arts Council of Northern Ireland. So I'd love to continue to produce imagery relevant to target audience, but maybe expand different locations. And rather than just look at vinyls, they're not very environmentally friendly. I'd look at biodegradable and easier on the environment methods.
I'd like to expand into more cross-community areas and and have photographic collaborations with wider communities and larger than I have at the moment.
So that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Is there any questions?
Well done. I think you both definitely nailed the brief that you were given, in that what you ended up with was not art that hangs in a frame on a wall, but that it wasn't actually what I was necessarily expecting whenever you were saying what you were doing. So I think it was really interesting and well done. I suppose I'm interested a little bit in actually the technique in getting the images that you ended up with your final pieces, as to cameras and lenses, and I think you mentioned film at one point, so I was just wondering whether you were film or digital. Or
So everything that I shot was on film, and it was I processed it myself and scanned all the film myself.
Okay, so that's all in the darkroom. And what camera did you use then?
I used it's pretty gigantic medium format film camera.
Okay.
It's like the size.
So that's a big
negative
then?
Yeah, it's a big negative.
And what about yourself?
I was exclusively digital because I haven't yet developed colour with colour film yet. So, and I wanted to make sure that my idea was solved before expanding. So I used my Sony A7 III in the studio, so I was able to connect it to the lights, able to look. I actually tailored it to the Mac so I could see on a large scale whether everything was in focus, was it exposed correctly, make sure I was able to actually make sure that they were suitable, because on my camera the picture's that size, but if the headphones were literally that size by the time I got it printed, so if there was a small mistake I needed to see it, so I just used Photoshop to.
So did it take a while, from in the studio to actually go into Photoshop, or did you have to reshoot, or did you get what you wanted the first time?
Luckily for these two, it was first time, but I went in the studio again with a different bunch of items, and glasses were the hardest ones to find, because I kept seeing more wee grimes. So I tried to clean them, but in the end I had to use Photoshop to get rid of every small speckle of dust.
Yeah, well no, I thought both photographs looked fabulous, so well done.
I think as it happens, you've kind of hit my hot spot. I just love art in general. I don't know enough about it, but I love art in general, and all types of art. I think we probably don't, like you've recognised, we don't use it. We were actually chatting about this before you started, and we don't use it enough in public realm, and I'm a big fan of art in public realm. because it does. And that whole thing of it brightens our life, it gives interest, it creates questions, you know, all the things that art should do.
Yeah.
I think one of the most powerful things for me was the fact that you took a certain direction and you're prepared to adapt and adopt. So, and for any good art and any good artist, you will change according, so you will have new thoughts, new thinking. You'll allow the environment to impact on you, allow other ideas to come in, and you could see you were adapting and adopting. And I think that's really powerful in itself. I think as well, you start to see other opportunities, and I love that idea of what I call art on fashion. And that bringing art into fashion. People see fashion itself as art, which it is, but that thing of bringing the two together, and it's interesting that you've done it on t-shirt. I'd love to see it on other types of dress, whether it's jeans, whether it's dresses, whether it's, you know, a whole range of things, and even fragments of. I just think it's a great idea of taking two pieces of art and putting them together. Yeah, I think it's just a great idea. I have to say, I'm a big Banksy fan, so I get the whole Banksy thing. I really get that, and that ability that, you know, what you've done is kind of taken that idea and then again put a twist on it. So I just think the whole that thing of being able to be flexible of mind, not starting out with a narrow idea and irrespective kind of channeling down there, that ability to take other things in, and that's what will make your art good. It's that all the time consuming energy, consuming information, consuming new ideas, having new thoughts and trying new things, but and the output is just so good. So good luck with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Very well done.
Thank you.
My name's Amy.
And I'm Pierce.
And today we're going to talk about one of the projects we've been recently just working on that we just finished over the weekend, which is a play called Mother Courage and Her Children. And we are second year HND Performing Arts students. So just to start off with, Mother Courage isn't the first commissioned project that the Glass Umbrella Theatre Company has had this year. At the start of the year, we had in October, we had a site-specific piece that was commissioned for the museum in Bangor, which had over 300 people attend, as well as in December we had our usual pantomime, which we done for 4 nights and had over 1,000 people over the 4 nights come to see
both these projects were like collaborative, so they used different people from different classes within the performing arts and production arts and music students, as well as Mother Courage, with only actually 1/5 of the actual people involved, which was 50 odd people, were actually cast members, 10 people in our class.
So for this project, a greater skills demand is being placed upon the actors from within the creative industry, and we had the essential and desired criteria that was needed, and all these skills needed to be developed and applied through our project-based learning. So the week leading up to Mother Courage, we were here within Tech from 9 in the morning till 9 at night. The whole week, and show week that was our show week. So on Friday night we had our first show, and then Saturday we had to come in and we done our second show, so it was over 2 nights. We done a dress rehearsal on the Friday morning, as well as another dress rehearsal on the Thursday, so that we could get used to all the elements that was going on.
So for this, it was acting, dancing and singing, and we decided on a suitable text which our tutor decided would be Mother Courage and Our Children. This is a very, very big play within the theatre realm. A lot of people are scared to tackle this play because a lot goes on. And I was playing Mother Courage herself, which Meryl Streep has previously played, so it was a big role on my shoulders, having to go in and do this.
So actors who can sing are in demand because many musicals written since the 1960s require both strong acting and good singing. Anyone who can act, sing and dance as well is even more likely to be cast in many different shows, making dance lessons a more worthwhile investment. This was just the case in Mother Courage, where we have different dance units and we have acting units, and then we don't have a singing unit, but we were working with Phil, the music teacher, to take us through harmonies and take us through singing. So we're having a class a week on it. But this is maybe the second project besides Panto where it was all combined, and for the performers this was maybe not a struggle, but it was challenging to combine all the elements from two different units into one.
And this is completely relevant for our future as we're performing arts students. It's what we want to go out and do in the industry. So giving us the opportunity to do all these things together sets up all our skills for the future. So Mother Courage is a recognised play. It has music within it, so the songs are written, but there's no music for it. So they're there in writing the words of the songs, but whatever music you put to it. So when the National Theatre done it, they got Duke Special to write the music. So what we done was we used the music of the Talking Heads, and we made the words from the play fit to them songs, which was a huge challenge because you know the tune, you know the rhythm, you know everything. You can hear it already in the music, and then you're having to adapt this to yourself.
We also thought that the Talking Heads was a great music because Mother Courage is about war. And then obviously the Talking Heads have a lot of songs that are kind of replicate that, like Life During Wartime and Road to Nowhere and all. They kind of all tie into the same sort of themes. So we thought, why not combine them both to make one project?
As performers as well, we had apply a variety of techniques, and multi-rolling was a big one. Mother Courage has 35 characters within the play, and there was 10 people in our class playing all 35 characters. So that was done through costume changes, through our ability as actors to present different physicalities, different voices, different accents. So there was a lot. There was 2 people in our class, me, who was playing Mother Courage, and another girl who was playing one of her children, Catherine, who didn't have to multi-role, so the rest was left to the other 8 people within our class. And we had to build a variety of different vocal work, so we had to work on lots of harmonies and lots of choreography as well. For Mother Courage as well, if you notice, my hair right now is blue and purple, and Pierce's is cut at the sides. Normally he would have long hair. So when discussing our characters, we decided that this is how we thought our characters were going to look, so we went and done it. We went and I got my hair dyed and Pierce got his hair cut, because within the acting profession, if the director asked you to do that, you would do it. You could say no if you really didn't want to, and they would maybe get you a wig or something, but it's better for you to really embrace your character. So we went and got it done.
So working with a live band, this is obviously extremely difficult, as you have to feel the exposed vocals and the tempo, and then there's obviously alternative arrangements. There's rehearsal schedules that we both have to stick to, because obviously we're 2 different classes, the music students and us. And finding out the days that we're both in or that we can both work together can be quite difficult, but we managed to work around that. And then we've got the harmony and then the trust and the communication. For us, I think the main difficulty was working with a band was obviously with being the Talking Heads, they're playing the Talking Head music, but we're not singing the Talking Head lyrics. So trying to get that all to fit into one was a nightmare at times, but it eventually did happen, and I think it was very worthwhile.
And then choreography, so this is obviously from one of the Talking Heads music videos. All our choreography was taken from their music videos, so a lot of the movements were similar to them. So if you knew the Talking Heads and had seen their music videos, then coming to see our show, a lot of that replicated it. If you've seen these music videos, as you can see, some of these movements, they're very strange, but they're really physically demanding. Yeah. So singing and doing all this movement at the same time was really difficult and huge for us.
I found a lot of these movements extremely hard because I was singing bass. So bass is quite a lot, down deep in. And if I'm going down deep in and balancing on my head like that, it's quite difficult. Yeah. But with a lot of practice, we managed to push through it.
And one of the big challenges we had as well as a full production was that our tutor and director, Steve, was actually the drummer in the show, as well as one of our technical people, Chris, was playing the guitar, which meant when that show was running, it was completely run by students. There was 55 students working on the project, backstage, stage management, lighting, actors on stage, everyone, all students, completely run by us. So when Steve was up there, he didn't know what was going on. There was a big gauze, there was a big scaff tower and a gauze, so a big sheet in front of it, and you can see through it from our side, but hardly see it through it from his side, so he had no idea what was going on stage while we were on. So it gave us a lot of skills that we needed, and a lot of skills that we can use in the industry. So working as a large group and a large ensemble, so not just us as a class, but everyone involved. Time management, so showing up to rehearsals, being on time, the amount of time needed for tech days, for dress rehearsals, for setting the scenes, for learning the songs. Being a healthy mind and body is really important. As Mother Courage, I was on stage 95% of the show, and the show was over 2.5 hours long, except for the interval. So I came off briefly, I think twice during the first act for maybe 1 or 2 minutes at a time, and one scene during the second act, which I didn't actually come off the stage. I sat at the front of the stage, like in with the audience for that one scene. So that was very physically demanding on me. So I needed to be in the right place, mind and body, in order to deal with this, as well as the fact it was a huge scale production, so there was so many props and lots of things going on like that as well.
I also found that time management, not only in terms of rehearsals, but in terms of ourselves, we have to manage our time outside of the rehearsal room. There's only so much you can do in there, so for us it's learning lines, for us it's developing these characters, because obviously if there's 10 of us, we can't have all the characters being the same, because that's confusing for an audience. If I come on 1 minute and I'm one character and next minute I'm a different character but playing it the same way, the audience aren't going to know that. So we have to portray that and find a way of doing that physically as well as vocally, so that they can understand that these are two different characters but the same person.
And just generally keeping our energy up and being respectful and polite of everybody else while they're on stage, because sometimes it was very long time setting scenes, and maybe it would mean maybe only me and Pierce would be in a scene and the rest of the members of the class are having to sit and wait until it's their turn for that type of character. So having that etiquette and being respectful of who was on stage and the work that they're trying to produce. So as we mentioned before, it's interdisciplinary, so HND music, production music, hair and beauty, technical makeup, production arts, construction and engineering played a big part. Mother Courage pulls a big cart that was made from scratch, that we had to get in and out of, and it had to be pulled around the stage during the show, so that was a big element that we had to deal with whenever we went into the technical week that was added on, as well as the HND level 1s. The HND year 1s in performing arts also helped as well. They were doing all the lighting and the backstage stuff, so there was a lot of people working on the project.
Yeah, because like us as actors can only do so much as well. Like without all these people that are a part of it, like we wouldn't have a show. So like it was great. It was great to be able to work with all these people, for all them to be able to use their talents and actually help us display maybe our talents and also enhance, like show theirs as well. It was great.
So our personal investment, so taking ownership over learning our own lines and being proud in what we produced and pushing ourselves to achieve. I know learning lines was very hard for me. I had a lot of lines in the show, and from a couple of months ago when we first started it, I had to block a scene and then learn the lines for that scene, because if I didn't, there was no way that I was going to be able to take that many information. I was talking for nearly 2.5 hours, and a lot of them were chunks of like 8 or 9 lines at a time on pages, and a lot of the stuff in Mother Courage is about war. It's about educating the audience, and it's from a Brecht point of view, so it's not naturalism. It's very like panto, where I could come out into the audience and speak to you directly and say, listen to what I'm saying. So it had to be important that I understood and knew what point I was making whenever I was on stage.
In terms of pushing ourselves to achieve better, at the end of most rehearsals, Steve would ask us, so what he's going to do afterwards, because it's we as performers need to know that what we could do to push ourselves to become better. So whether that was working your character, whether that was working the choreography, working the harmonies, we all knew ourselves that we had to do something to better ourselves and better the performance going home.
And in the end, we produced a real world product that went out to a paying audience that people paid to come see, which we've had the chance to do lots of times throughout this, and one thing we would say was, with it being Bangor in the space, we didn't get a huge audience for it, but if we were to do it again, we'd take it on tour. We'd take it into Belfast, we'd do the Mac, the Lyric. A show like this would sell out in places like that because they're more accessible. While it's here, it's quite hard. We can advertise to all the theatre people we know. A lot of us are in amateur dramatic productions, but for some people who are Belfast based, it's hard to get them to travel down to Bangor to see it.
Especially with, say, because it's a nighter shows and stuff like that, it's hard for them to, say, get the last train or get stuff like that. So it can be hard for them to come down and be able to actually sit and watch the show.
And then my personal achievement, I felt, was I was able to gain confidence in my current skill set, as well as being introduced to new performative demands. So harmony work and working with a band, like I've done a lot of that before, but having specific lessons from Phil that actually taught me how to listen for harmonies, he would play 2 notes and say, right, which one was the highest one, and I had to listen myself to really understand that. So getting that greater understanding was what I enjoyed learning from it.
For me, this was the chance for me to combine multiple units, not just from this year, but for the past 2 years. And these aspects were separate until this project, and this was a chance to combine the multiple factors of the performance.
So this is actually just a photo of what the set looked like. So it took up a lot of the space. If you can't see on the ground, this is it's wood chip. And we had to walk in the wood chip, which was wet for the first couple of days, which was quite slippy and hard to walk on until it dried in. Some people were in bare feet on the wood chip as well, so it was getting used to all that. And that is the cart, which you can't see from this side, but on the other side had a Bansky photo on the side of it, which is the one where he's throwing it looks like a bomb, but it's flowers, so that one. And we used the song, the Talking Heads song, Nothing But Flowers, as our finale for the show, so it worked really well.
Below the wood chip there was also footprints of red and like people walking barefoot and stuff like that. It's kind of representing like war and like the bloodshed of war and stuff like that. So there's a point where one of the characters gets dragged out from just behind that Act 1 sign, and all you could see was the redness being dragged out, and the wood chip obviously following him, which looked pretty good on stage.
And we projected a lot of this in the background, so this is pages from the actual script of Mother Courage being projected on, so certain sentences we felt were very important and relevant that the audience should listen to from us, but also see, so that they can really read it and understand, as well as these cards that is very bracked, so it sets the stage. It tells you when Act 1 is, when Act 2 is. It's constantly reminding you that what you're watching, even though sometimes it's very deep issues, is just a play. That's all it is.
It's performers, it's not people.
So this is just another photo of it, and these are some of our production shots throughout the play. So there was so much to cope with throughout the whole thing, and this was up at the top. So behind this gauze was a huge scaff tower. It was, the bottom of it was maybe up to here. So there was 2 ladders that the band had to climb up, and there's Steve bass there drumming. So they had to climb up and basically live up behind that gauze the whole of the show. Yes, so thank you very much. Any questions?
Of course. Of course. We're not going to let you escape with no questions. That was amazing, the amount of enthusiasm that you're showing for something. Because when did you say that you finished?
We finished the show Saturday there.
Yeah,
we just finished.
Still a bit tired from it. But
Yes,
exhausted.
I'm surprised you're not still in bed. It's amazing to know what actually goes on to bring a production to life, and all of those other people, I suppose, that are involved, etc. in it. I suppose I wanted to just pick up on one thing that you'd said about the marketing, because obviously I know it can be challenging to bring people from Belfast down to Bangor, and I was just wondering whether, I don't remember seeing it, whether you had any links in with any of the marketing students within SERC as to whether it would be worthwhile to link with them to try and...
We always struggle with that aspect.
Yeah.
I'm so busy trying to get everything else together. The marketing's one thing I always have no time.
It's easy for the panto and stuff, because it's sold out.
It sells out
really quickly.
Northtown mums, they just take the panto on their group, and it sells out really quick.
4 shows, so
sold out.
Two shows are nearly sold out before we even found
we
out.
had
you
to
know.
put on an extra show for the cast members to get their tickets during Panto because North Down Mums had so like. But this show it had really strong language in this show. It's not suitable for people under the age of 15. Like, I mean, younger could come if their parents said like the languages, but the issues and themes in this show were very, very strong. And also, we also used a live gunshot at the end of the show. So it wasn't for
a starter pistol.
It was a starter pistol, so it was quite loud.
Check it with the policeman.
Oh yeah, we had to like.
There was only two. There was only three people out to hold it. Chris, Sasha, who handed it to Adon, and then it went back to Chris.
And then it was in a box. A box had to be mounted to the wall in Chris's office to put the gun in, and had to be locked like especially.
The bullets had to be stored separate and all. So there was a lot of
so
precautions.
there's a lot, but we as a class, like, it's been made through the marketing department, or like SERC in general made the Facebook groups for it, and then we were able to invite all our friends on all our Facebooks, and then share it with everyone and things like that.
Just the main feedback was just the location of it, because I know a lot of people that are similar to my age that are like maybe can't drive and stuff like that. That maybe might not be able to get down to Bangor. Well, we're both from like Newton Abbey, Belfast direction. So
a lot of our classes as well. There's very few people within our performing arts class that are actually from Bangor. There's only two. So we're all travelling from Belfast. So getting all of our friends to travel down, especially like I drive, but I can't bring my friends to see the show because I'd be here already. So and then a lot of other classes within performing arts did come to see it, but they came during the day where they could use like their train passes and things like that.
So you get free travel to come up and down, you know.
No, it just seems a shame if you didn't get the audience, because it sounds like it was an amazing show.
About 50 odd people each night or something like that.
Which was good. It was a good audience. So
What would you do differently?
Saying either tour it, so we get to actually bring it around, because I think that's a great show for like people like us, like, well, no, not the language and stuff, maybe tone down the language and stuff for like schools and stuff like that, because I know for like a lot of syllabus and stuff, and plus it's a Brechtian show, which Brecht's one of the practitioners you actually learn throughout GCSE and A level, and I know when I was doing GCSEs and A levels there was very little shows like that you could actually actively go see, you know. So that'll be one of the things I would be interested in.
And just having it more than two shows, because once you're done the first show you only really have one to sort of improve on. Originally it had been 4, but obviously we had to cut back because of the ticket sales and things like that, but having more than one show, although in the end we got the dress rehearsal in the Friday daytime, so that was given us, and it was an open dress, so Steve sent out an email to all the college, so anyone from SERC could have came, but people tend not to come if they don't know what it is, or it's not something that they've never heard of before.
And the biggest learning for each of you? What was the biggest thing you learned?
Well, it's definitely that time management and learning stuff, because I know I can pick up lines pretty quickly, like it's one of the things I can do, but for me it was I was getting into the last week and I had 2 characters that were very similar, and I was trying to figure out a way of differentiating these characters, which can be quite hard, because but eventually I took inspiration from the Balmoral show and made one of them a bit of a culture. So that's my only way of getting out of that. But it's definitely I think a lot of our class would probably say the same thing, because I found it easier for Panto where I was playing one character, so I was playing the Dame for character, for that was my character, but I found that a lot easier to learn lines from one character, because it's only thinking about one character's perspective. But when you've taken 3 or 4, there's 3 or 4 different kind of mindset you kind of have to approach with, and it can be
jumping between them as well, so Pierce had to go from one character and then back to another.
With a 2-minute quick change, throw on a hat and you're back on as a different character, you know. So
for me, I think taking on a role like Mother Courage was a big thing. It's so well known in the theatre land, and there's so many people, like the last person to play it in National Theatre was Fiona Shaw, and she won a BAFTA like last week. So that scared me, because it's a big part, and obviously she has these 3 children. If you don't know the story, all her children die throughout the story. She has 3 children. Pierce was one of my children in it. So
I'm glad you're still here, Pierce.
She's not. I know. She's not very sympathetic. So she's not. She lives off war. So it's everything that I'm not as a person. So taking that on and then having to try and emotionally deal with these things a lot, in theatre, when you do a lot of naturalism, if you see your friend, my best friend was another one of my daughters, and she got shot at the end, so I had to sing to her body and try not to get emotional, like as you are, the way you would if you were watching it, was very, very difficult for me.
Just a comment. I think the production itself, I mean, mother courage is such a difficult subject, but so I think a courageous choice and a courageous approach. Just, I mean, that is such a lot to take on. So I just think it's fantastic. It's physically, emotionally, mentally challenging, and as you say, the self-discipline it requires to get through that. So I just think it's fabulous.
Thanks.
Well done.
Thank you.
Some of the work on regarding his work placement, and Ryan's a student in the John Moores University BA Business Studies.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan McKay and I'm here to give you a brief overview of my placement project. So I did that as part of my foundation degree in leadership management actually, and I carried out in the HR department of the Henderson's Group, and more specifically in their in-house training branch, the Academy. So first I'll give you a bit of a background on Henderson. So Henderson started in 1897 and they started as market stalls in George's Market selling local produce. You may know them as the owners of the Spar, Eurospar and Vivo franchises in Northern Ireland. They are actually one of the largest employers in Northern Ireland with over 3,400 employees, including myself actually working in one of the stores. They are actually split up into 4 indigenous companies. Henderson Retail, Henderson Food Service, Henderson Group Property and Henderson Wholesale, and then the subdivisions of Henderson Wholesale are Henderson Technology, Henderson Print and then the Academy, which I did my placement in. So the revenue of the company is about 759 million at the beginning of 2019 with profits of 39 million for the year, and they gained a ranking in the UK's most successful businesses last year. So the task I was given by Henderson Group and ultimately the title of my whole project was to evaluate the effectiveness of leadership development within Henderson Group. So to best carry out my research, I put together 3 objectives to base my research around, and using a range of primary, secondary, quantitative and qualitative research, I set out to, firstly, identify current internal and external leadership performance and development within Henderson Group. Secondly, to identify industry leadership development programs, and thirdly, to evaluate the effectiveness of leadership development within Henderson Group and provide recommendations. So about 2 years ago, Henderson's introduced their 4-tier leadership pathway. The 4 tiers are offered across the group to a range of different job roles and descriptions, with even the most experienced managers taking part in the level 1 course. So the 4 tiers are aspiring leaders, emerging leaders, developing leaders and established leaders, and they are provided by both the Academy within Henderson Group as well as some external trainers, Tom Brown being one of them, and also Queen's University Leadership Institute. So the cost of these courses ranges from £200 right up to £3,000 per delegate. So it's a big investment for Henderson's to put the employees through this. Some managers have been in the role for maybe 20 plus years, and until they introduced this leadership pathway, they maybe had no management training. So they're in manager position, but they've had no leadership training. So it's very good that they brought this in. Also, whilst at Henderson's, I was given a range of data that included reports, surveys, and written evaluation carried out by external companies, investors and people, which I'm sure you've all heard of, and the happiness index, as well as some in-house research. This was a great source of secondary research and allowed me to analyse a huge range of information that I personally would never be able to gather myself during the 12 weeks. So next on to the industry programmes. So I looked at some of the industry programmes that other companies have. So in order to compare the Henderson Group pathway, I did some research into industry leadership programmes that are available externally. So the two I chose to look at were the Chartered Management Institute and the Institute of Leadership Management, as you can see here. The benefits of using the likes of these providers is that it would allow Henderson staff to gain a recognised qualification outside of the company in which they could study whilst working. However, with the course being externally run, this means that there's a lot less flexibility with booking people onto the courses, and it also can be very generic and not relevant to Henderson's as the in-house designed ones are. So as my primary research, I carried out some surveys, interviews and course observation. So firstly, my course observation. So sitting in a range of leadership development courses, both run by Henderson's Group and external providers, give me a good insight into the content, style and approach to the training. This allowed me to create my own view on the training as well as see the engagement of the participants. So then I sent out a survey of 12 questions to about 200 managers and team leaders asking about their experience taking part in the leadership pathway. And and I got a response rate of about 25%. Who carried out the survey, and the results that stood out for me most were around the levels of interest and support from line managers, and found that 28% of delegates had no pre-course meetings or discussions with their line managers before taking part on the courses. 40% of delegates not receiving any pre-course information, so not even knowing what's on the courses, and 40% of delegates had little or no post-course conversation with their manager after taking part in the course. So this really stood out for me as an issue. So then I conducted 10 face-to-face and telephone interviews with employees across the group. There were 7 questions, and they were derived from the survey results and concentrated down on the pre- and post-course experience and the support that the employees were receiving. So some quotes from the interviews that backed up my research and really stood out again for me were, firstly, it's very costly to do these courses and they must be treated with respect. The second quote is, doing a development course without a meeting afterwards is a pointless exercise. And then lastly, people often just get sent on courses. Managers need to meet and talk about why you're being sent on the course and associate it with your development plan, but I don't think that happens enough. So that even says that the opinions of employees at Henderson's just feel like they're not getting the support that they deserve. So my evaluation then, the surveys and interviews proved that the overall performance of leaders was of a good standard. The survey proved that the courses were relevant, with 57% of employees found the programme very relevant, and then up to 92% when finding it somewhat relevant, as well as 94% of delegates taking something useful away from the course and seeing a change in their job role as a result. As I think it rules out the need for a full use of an external run course, as Henderson Group's Academy is most effective and efficient for a company of their size and diversity of job roles. However, the level of support that was provided by line managers both before and after taking part in leadership development is just not consistent enough for the company. So my recommendations for the group regarding my project were introducing 2 policies to be implemented in line with the pathway. So my first one is the prior discussion policy. All employees must have a pre-course discussion with their line manager regarding why they're being put forward for the course, what they're expecting to gain from attending the course, whether it gets them a promotion or getting direct reports, and where they see themselves in the next 1 to 5 years, and how attending this course will aid them in this. My second policy is a post-course meeting policy. All employees who have completed a course should have a set meeting with their line manager. This meeting should discuss what the delegate has learnt, what they found useful, maybe not so useful, how they would like to incorporate elements of what they have learnt into the role, and what support they may need to progress in the future. So for both these policies, I would like to see them signed off by both the delegate and the line manager in order to be awarded with their accredited tier. I'm suggesting that these policies should be advised to all managers across the group and introduced to the next cohorts of each tier to be trialled. And once a return rate of signed off programmes is identified, the policies can be adjusted and added to all future leadership development pathway courses. The impact of implementing the following recommendations would smooth out these inconsistencies within the leadership pathway, and the high percentage of delegates not receiving pre-course and post-course discussions found in my research to be reduced to a minimum, if not ruled out completely. So I think with such a solid leadership pathway in place, the effectiveness should be improved once delegates and managers are using it to its full potential as part of a progression path and not just as another course to be sent on. The benefits should be made clear to delegates and ultimately should show results for the company and the individuals. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
any questions.
Yeah, really interesting in terms of trying to align training with people's expectations and then see what impact the training's actually had, training development's had. But that disconnect between line manager and training, you know, who's being sent, why they're being sent, and what impact has it had. The other thing I'd be interested to know, is there any alignment, or have you looked for any alignment between what the company's strategy is? So this is what we're trying to do as an organisation over the next 3 to 5 years, and the training and development that the organisation's providing. Are those, do they look to align those two things?
They don't actually have a leadership development strategy currently. I spoke to a range of managers and they just don't. It's not in their core at the moment, so I think that's one of the big issues. Just not spending enough time on it. They've spent all the money like getting these courses together, but they're not actually implementing them to the best of their ability. Just need to work on it a lot, I think, personally. So.
Okay, and did you get an opportunity of talking to the leadership in the organisation? So I mean, right at the top in terms of what because what they're spending against what they're getting.
Well, yeah, well, I spoke to like directors, right up from directors right down to team leaders in stores, and yeah, I spoke to a lot of people about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Did any of your research include looking then at what the progression is like within the company? I mean, is it a common practice for people who've been in some of these training courses to move their way up the ranks, or
I think it's very dependent on department. So I spoke to people who he did the first course, and then within that he got a promotion, and then from getting the promotion went on the second course. But this was all with a lot of support from his line of manager. So some departments are getting that support, and then other people are just being sent on the course because there's availability for a course. So I think it is just very dependent on the departments, and that's the inconsistency there is just.
Because that would probably be quite an interesting thing to measure as well. Then is what the impact of, say, your two recommendations. Obviously, some line managers were discussing courses with their people that reported to them, and others weren't, and it would be interesting just to see how that the difference in somebody's career prospects based on that.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was also interested in whether you'd made any further recommendations in terms of continuing to monitor the implementation of the two policies that you'd recommended.
No.
That's maybe the next step that the company would be doing, because that would be really interesting as well to and it is just to try and see what the actual impact and outcome for employees actually is.
Yeah. Do they have a formal appraisal system?
Again, just department based. Some people there's meant to be one in place, but again, they don't follow it, not consistently. So, yeah, I don't think it's very fair for a lot of people. So, hopefully, my policies will have that.
Yeah, I think it's probably quite common across a lot of organisations, probably, that we all have appraisal and leadership systems, but it is it's how they're applied can make a huge difference.
Yeah. There's sometimes training and development is done for the wrong reasons. So it is for the organisation in terms of to get investors and people or whatever, so to get an accreditation rather than to improve performance. And a disconnect between the company corporate performance and the individual performance, and they don't link them up. And of course, the corporate performance is solely dependent on the individual performance. So it's interesting to look at those things not in isolation, but connect it up. And that's why the corporate strategy is important, as anything you're doing should be leading to delivering on the corporate strategy, and it's what piece everybody plays. But then you need to measure where they start, measure where they finish, and that's what appraisals are for.
Yeah, I see the difference then, definitely. Yeah.
But it's, I mean, this is fundamental. What you've just done is fundamental to the performance of a business, but it's also fundamental to how people behave within an organisation, and whether people feel satisfied in terms of get job satisfaction.
Definitely.
Absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well done.
It's a good piece of work.
Yeah, well done.
I'm glad to see.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julianne Brownlee. I am a third year. I've just completed my third year of the BA Business degree. I'm a part-time student. I am going to summarise my dissertation today, but basically just the whys and hows surrounding my project. So my project title was Motivation in the Voluntary Sector, and to what extent can public and private sector leaders learn from their third sector counterparts in relation to motivation. So just a little background, why choose this topic? Well, firstly, I guess, and was the core reason to my dissertation, that I have gained valuable leadership experience in all three sectors. I believe that this topic would tap into my strengths and abilities, but also putting the new skills that I learned here at SERC into practice also. I was extremely curious to delve further into just what motivates people generally, and to see if there was any correlation between the academic studies out there and then moving into the practical social sphere. But of course, as Saunders et al. Says, they state the importance of subject choice when establishing a specific topic you are likely to do well in. So then moving forward, and I guess this is quite tough for me, trying to get my vision put into reality. So between brainstorming and the many classes of discussion, all feedback led back to this topic area for me. For sure, different ideas were thrown about, but I just got this uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach that it just wasn't right. So I decided to be bold and move forward in this area of personal interest for me, although it was very different from anybody else. I felt good about moving forward on it. So then really it was time to tie down that research question, which I'm sure many of you will know that in itself is not an easy task. So I had this vision, but how would my project essentially unfold? So I decided to interview individuals in the different sectors within their own environment, and I chose not to record them. I had a type fast, speak even faster kind of a rule to it. Also, surveys and focus groups. This included all participants having worked in the in any of the sectors, plus voluntary as well. I even had a vision of how and where I was going to present it, who was going to help me out, even with the hospitality on that evening. Never mind nailing down the survey questions. I was gaining confidence week in, week out, and moving forward with a multi-strategy approach, even deciding to create my own YouTube channel as evidence to my project. So then moving on to the literature. The actual literature review frightened the life out of me. However, my tutor Susie assured me that I would be fine and I would find my flow, and of course she was right. Trawling through the many sources and articles, you definitely gain an eye just for what you're looking for. And the key sources I use, which many of you will recognise, were Body, Cloud, Combe, Martin Fallens, Mullins, Saunders et al. And Wilson. Now in relation to gaps, I found quite a few gaps in the literature, and particularly was limited surrounding leadership styles, namely the transformational leadership style, a pace-setting leadership style, which cropped up actually from one of my interviewees, and then personality traits linked to a particular sector. So then moving on to my key findings. This was really interesting, but I'll make it as brief as possible and just run through the elements that came up for me. So the same motivators were apparent with employees and volunteers. Money was not a primary motivator. Flexible working was noted by one leader as a personal motivator, so she in turn then offered that to her employees with, she said, absolutely fantastic outcomes. Another noted that it is in fact what money can unlock for an individual that is the motivator, and of course that's landing into Mullins. Another interviewee affirming Mitchell in that individuals are unique and one cannot communicate with everyone at the same level or make assumptions of an employee or a volunteer's capacity. Then in regard to the focus group, my question was put to the group with a 43% positive response, indicating public and private sector leaders are somewhat like.
And I know certainly from conversations that we have, there always tends to be a little bit of who thinks they can do things better, which is always interesting. But no, I thought that your research piece was really, really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting area, both in terms of motivation itself, so it's just a general subject, and then across the 3 different sectors. I don't know whether I have the good fortune or misfortune to work on all 3, so I do get involved heavily in all 3, and this is not work that's really been done, so you would have a lot of anecdotal stuff, just exactly as you said, so each of those sectors would feel differently about each other. Couple of things. One, was there any work done in here in terms of the key differences across the 3 sectors? So was there any measurement done of the levels anecdotally from the groups, the levels of motivation that existed in each of the sectors?
Yeah, I did. It's in my. I was going to say the copy of the dissertations there, and you can look. It's just hard to put everything on a screen. It's not 120 pages,
No.
but yeah. And we were quite tied to the amount of questions we could ask as well. So there's only like 12 questions, I suppose. So a gentleman, I was only supposed to interview 3 people, in each sector, and a retired gentleman I know had actually the benefit of working in all 3, and he asked could he be interviewed, and actually that was really valuable information as well that I hadn't anticipated. He's since retired and was able just to kind of globally look at that. But yeah, there was, you can see from, there's different questions there that it was really interesting, especially with myself being in that sector. It's kind of, is it all about the money or not?
Well, the other interesting thing, of course, in terms of motivation, because you focused here, understanding on leadership styles, so what impact is leadership styles, but there are 2 other major things that can impact people's motivation. One is the organisational and the other is environmental. So the organisation, how it works and how it operates.
The culture,
and indeed, and if you look back on the last presentation in terms of Henderson's, and therefore how the organisation is set up and how it behaves can have a major impact on people's motivations. So if you're sending them on courses and they don't know why and they're not getting any feedback afterwards, and it's not related to what they're trying to do and what the organisation is trying to do, actually you'd think training and development would be motivational. It becomes demotivating because people don't see the context of it.
It works opposite.
So the organisational, so leaving aside leadership impact on motivation, kind of organisational impact, and because organisations in the public, private and voluntary sectors are very differently structured, that would be interesting in itself. So kind of, as a further...
Some of the answers that people provided would blow your mind, honestly, and you probably realise some of the stuff I probably couldn't even put in, to be fair, to protect them. But even for instance, the transformational leader, right? So all the leaders I interviewed viewed themselves as being transformational. However, you're right, of course. Moving into all the surveys and the volunteers, that didn't come up. Nope, none of them actually are transformational. And to be fair, some of the people actually worked under these transformational leaders, as I called it. So I find that quite interesting. However, they've all invited me back with my dissertation because they would like to hear how I get on and if they can do anything different. So I would say quite some surprises in there.
Did you look at any data? There's some data which can tell you independently something about organisational motivation or about individual motivation. So things like turnover of staff and absence. You get sickness and absence and you get turnover of staff. One of the first things, when I've taken over a company, we bought companies, whatever, one of the first things I look at is not the balance sheet. It's actually the organisational stuff. It is, are we turning over our staff? And particularly because I was managing organisations with high employment, a lot of people. So, one had over 10,000 people. If you're having high turnover of staff, that's a massive cost. Client relationships, employee relationships, but just cost in terms of having to re-employ people, train them, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So things like that. So independent, which can test what people are telling you. So the stuff you're getting anecdotally, you actually look at some data, and if you get high turnover of staff and you get a lot of sickness, that's telling me that there's an issue of motivation
it's not
in there.
working. And I suppose really from the employee's perspective, I don't know about you, whenever you're looking for a job, like if you keep seeing the same company coming up looking for jobs, it's really off-putting, like you're not going to go for it.
Well, unless they're expanding very quickly, you'd be right. You'd be absolutely right. So it's interesting just to kind of look into different areas and aspects that will give you some independent data as to what's actually happening in an organisation, and then you can start to drill down. Is it leadership style? Is it environment? Is it organisational behaviour? It's really interesting, but it is such an important area.
Yeah, I love the OB now, to be fair.
Yeah.
That's kind of the driver of it for me, that module. Really enjoyed it.
It's really good work.
Thank you so much.
Well done.
Good, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. I'll introduce myself first of all. I'm Michael Malone. I'm the Director of Curriculum at the college, and I'd like first of all to thank all the participants here today. First of all, Patricia and Terence for coming along and giving your time to supporting our students and helping their development. Extremely important to bring external people in to the college so that we can get a different perspective on the level that our students have reached. So again, I'd like to give them a round of applause. Secondly, I'd like to thank your tutors for bringing you along today and for all the work that they've put into you over the year. I know they're extremely busy. When I was a lecturer, this was probably a late Easter and 2 bank holidays in May is usually the worst combination, and I remember it very well. Extremely intense for lecturers and students. So I really appreciate you coming along today with your students and giving them the opportunity to present today. So again, if you could show your appreciation for your tutors. You can give each other a pat on the back later on. And then yourselves, the students, extremely important that we have started to develop this a number of years ago, and now we're seeing the fruits of this because the quality of the presentations, the depth of knowledge that the students have of their projects, and the communication skills, because I remember this when we first started this a number of years ago, the students were much more nervous, certainly weren't as fluent, and that's really what we're trying to do at SERC with the project-based learning approach that we have adopted in the college, because this will stand you instead whenever you go for interviews or you become an employer of your own or whatever path you choose to take. And the depth of knowledge, you know, for example, I was listening very carefully to the 2 performers today, and the depth of knowledge about the background to the play and the impact that it had on them is phenomenal, and those who've gone out on projects to industry, again, extremely important. That's a big part of what you'll probably do in the future. So I'm just going to wrap up and say again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Can I just make a couple of general remarks, because obviously we've given some feedback to the students. And a couple of things from my perspective. First of all, I come here to SERC regularly now, and I come here because I want to come here, so I'm motivated to come here. And why? Mostly because of the whole thing of project-based learning. So it's what's different, it's what makes SERC different. And I get I've had lots of requests from universities and colleges to come work with them. This is one I've chosen to work with because of that approach, and because I actually get a significant amount from it. I think it's true to say that every time I've been asked to come along and every time I've been asked to do something, I've always said yes, because I'm motivated to come along here because of the approach and the leadership. And the way I would kind of summarize it, I made a couple of notes as I went along. And today is a great example of the practical application of learning, the practical application and the outcomes from learning. And it's taking thought and learning and injecting passion. And we saw lots of passion today from everybody. And I know it's difficult standing up there talking about yourself and talking about what you've done. But taking that learning, turning it into something of practical value, and then showing real passion about what you've learned and what you've done is very significant. And the great thing about it is that what you've been doing, it's not just a value to you for work in the future, it's a value to you for life. So the things that you've been learning and the things that you've been applying are actually going to be of value to you in life, not just in work. So for me, just every single example, every single project showed those things, that great passion that you've given to your work and the practical output that came from it. So not only congratulations therefore to you and obviously to your individual mentors and lecturers, but to the organisation as a whole.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It's a bit different and special.
Thank you. And I don't know if Patricia, I'll give you the opportunity maybe to say something as well.
I think it's all been said. I wasn't really 100% sure what I was coming to this morning. I saw some impressive titles on what was being discussed, but I didn't expect it to necessarily be as professional as it has been. And I suppose one of the things I would just say is what we're constantly being told in the council and what our economic development team are constantly telling us is that sometimes whenever it comes to getting jobs and to employers, it's not always about the technical side of things that they're actually really looking for. What they're saying that they really, really need more and more is, I suppose they're called the softer skills. So it is the ability to kind of come and stand up in front of a group of people that you don't know and be able to give a presentation on your subject. So things like this, I think, are so important to actually helping people get ready for work, because like I say, it's not always just about knowing your subject in and out, but it is how you actually apply it and how you communicate about it to others that's really, really important. So well done.
And I think the way the students handled the questions and were able to respond to the questions and develop the answers, etc., was very, very impressive for me today.
For me
too. When I think back to when we first introduced this about 8 or 9 years ago, the students were literally shaking. And I know everybody does shake to a certain extent, whenever you're public speaking, but they were very faltering and so on, and that was our first steps of trying to develop this. And we have now seen a massive improvement over the last number of years, and that's down to the work that the tutors have done with project-based learning throughout the whole year. We start this off in September and it works right the way through the year, and now this week we have the exposition of the students' work, which is fantastic to see. And as we measure ourselves in our publicity through the number of qualifications that students achieve. We have the highest success rates in the sector. They're a byproduct of the learning. What we see today is the learning, and that's the important bit for us. So thank you very much. Congratulations again on getting through today. We know it's an ordeal, we understand that, but that's part of your development. And the fact that you've been able to do that will stick with you. You know, this presentation that you did today will stick with you for a very, very long time. So well done.